Chapter 943 Trip to the Dark Universe. 80 seconds. We'll talk about it in detail when we get back to the capital. Elizariel said in a low voice. Sure. Zhou acknowledged. He had already sensed that there was some malice and greed hidden in the surroundings, targeting Empress Elizariel and the spirit-nurturing stone seed fragment in his hands. The reason why he didn't make a move at this moment was probably because of his existence as a true god-tier combatant. Once he left, this group of malicious and greedy fellows would probably tear off their disguises and attack. How about this? I'll send you back. With my galaxy, I'll send you back very quickly. Zhou thought for a moment and said. Really? Elizariel was overjoyed. If they could have this common people's regal by their side, their safety would definitely not be a problem. Even if Vapolius came personally, he might not be able to obtain this fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts from him. Really? Zhou acknowledged. When he accepted the faction quests and handed the spirit-nurturing stone seed to Elizariel, he had already become enemies with the Vapolius Pantheon group. Not to mention that the other party wanted to trap him and destroy the soldiers he had painstakingly nurtured. This was something that Zhou could not tolerate. In the current situation, it was no longer a matter of whether Vapolius wanted to form a grudge with Zhou. It was a matter of whether Zhou was willing to let him off. The answer was definitely no. He had already blatantly dealt with him, so how could Zhou be kind enough to let him off? He wasn't that broad-minded. When I advance to the mid-tier deity level in the future, I'll go and chat with Vapolius. Zhou thought to himself then. He didn't say anything else. He directly took out a galaxy from his inner world and boarded it with the gods before letting Elizariel and his ministers board it. Galaxy's main cabin. Zhou stood in front of the control panel and said to Wuxia, the target is Alanos, the capital of the Elven Empire. Yes, Your Majesty. Wuxia said respectfully. Galaxy number 1 is setting sail. The destination for this journey is the capital of the Elven Empire, Alanos. Distance, about 4 light days. Time required for normal voyage, about 3 hours and 18 minutes. Time required to travel after entering the Dark Universe, about 80 seconds. Dark Universe engine has been activated. Entering the Dark Universe. Galaxy number 1 has officially entered the Dark Universe. Your Majesty and guests, please wait patiently. Gentlemen, wait 80 seconds. In 80 seconds, we'll be at Alanos. After hearing this, Zhou looked at the elves and chuckled. All the elves were shocked when they heard this. It only took 80 seconds to cross a distance of 4 light days. When they came here, even with the convenience of the teleportation array, it took them more than 3 hours. Wasn't this common people's regal the lord of the myriad races who had just risen? Why did it feel like he was not inferior to those powerful races? Elizariel, on the other hand, was experienced and knowledgeable. Upon hearing this, she sighed with emotion and asked curiously, every time I see the technological civilization of the Machina race, I find it very unbelievable. This galaxy spaceship must have been created by the top spaceship manufacturing group of the Machina race, right? Ordinary low-level deity spaceships could not achieve such speed. This was already comparable to the speed of a true god tier. The Galaxy spaceship is a series of spaceships personally built for our blazing sun kingdom by the Master God tier, Your Excellency. Therefore, its performance is slightly better than ordinary low-tier deity-level elementary-grade spaceships. Zhou asked. The Galaxy spaceship flew around every day, so it was not something that could be hidden. Hence, Zhou was not afraid to tell anyone about this. He could use the Machina race and the Master God tier to make the other races wary of him. Elizariel was indeed very shocked when she heard this. It was personally created by the Master God tier. They looked out at the Dark Universe. The Dark Universe was incomparably dark, like a bottomless abyss. making people feel fear just by looking at it. Everyone only took a glance and did not dare to look anymore. Those enemies who tried to rob us on the way probably didn't expect us to leave so quickly, right? Elizariel smiled. Unless a true god tier pursues them personally, there won't be any enemies chasing after them. Zhou nodded and asked, "Oh yes. Why isn't Your Excellency Octavel here?" After all, this was a fragment of his true god tier divine artifacts. Why did he send a junior over? Wasn't he afraid that it would be snatched away by other factions? Your Excellency Octavel went to explore the mystic realm with another true god tier a few days ago. She won't be back for the time being. Elizariel said. Zhou frowned. True god tier also needed resources. Moreover, at their level, the resources required might not even be able to be gathered by an entire world. Therefore, most true god tiers spent most of their time traveling the myriad worlds, trying their luck to find a world or high-level mystic realm that could produce the resources they needed. If Octavel had gone to the mystic realm with other true god tiers to search for treasures, there was indeed nothing they could do. However, if that was really the case, it meant that the other party didn't think so from the beginning. This time, he was able to take out his true god tier divine artifacts fragment from the mystic realm, even with the help of the common people's regal. Therefore, he wasn't even interested in staying behind to wait for news. He smiled inwardly and didn't mind. Then, he threw a leaf to Elizariel. This leaf was called the Leaf of Fertility. It contained a divine power spell that Octavel had specially customized for the spiritual maiden. Originally, he had asked Elizariel to give it to Zhou because he wanted Zhou to use this Leaf of Fertility to suppress the spiritual maiden's strength and increase the probability of recovering the true god tier divine artifacts fragment. Unexpectedly, Zhou did not use it at all. Zhou had no intention of keeping the leaf. It was just a leaf treasure that carried the divine power of an intermediate true god tier. To Zhou, his chaos holy power was not much weaker than this thing. Elizariel couldn't help but feel a little surprised when she saw the intact and undamaged Leaf of Fertility. She didn't expect it to be useless. However, when he thought of this person's past achievements, he immediately felt that it was very normal. Hence, after sincerely flattering Zhou, she accepted it without asking. Soon, 79 seconds passed. Everyone felt the spaceship under their feet tremble slightly. Then, the scenery outside the virtual exterior mode suddenly changed. The incomparably huge divine kingdom star and the elven mother tree that was like a heavenly canopy were immediately reflected in everyone's eyes. We are at Alanos. A reassuring smile appeared on Elizariel's face. Only when he arrived at his territory did he feel truly safe. At this moment, the spirit-nurturing stone seed true god-tier divine artifacts fragment in Elizariel's hand suddenly lit up with a resplendent emerald green light. The next second, this fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts actually flew out of his hand, directly passing through the cabin wall of the galaxy and flying to the outside world. Finally, it landed in the hands of a woman with long, smooth emerald green hair, a fair face, and exquisite and graceful facial features. She was wearing a gorgeous and huge green gown with white edges. Chapter 944 Octavel's Request. Rejected. Greetings, Your Excellency. He said respectfully. Octavel did not speak. Instead, she looked behind him. Zhou slowly walked over and stood in front of Octavel. Greetings, Your Excellency Octavel. Zhou said politely. Your Excellency, common people's regal. Octavel smiled and said, I've heard of your name a long time ago. Today is our official meeting. Officially? Your Excellency, have we met before? Zhou raised his eyebrows and asked. When you first came to Alanos to accept the faction quests, I was in the Divine Kingdom. I saw you then, but I was busy with other things at that time, so I didn't come to see you, the strongest lord of all races. Octavel felt a little emotional. Back then, the strongest lord of all races was just a reward title given to you by the Supreme Will in the previous event. Now, I'm afraid that you, the strongest lord of all races, have already become a reality. Even if it's the truth, it won't change anything. Zhou shook his head. The enemy has never weakened. Instead, they have become stronger. Of course, Octavel knew that the other party was referring to the civilizations behind the lords of the myriad races, especially those with top bloodlines. However, he still smiled and said, at least among the lords of the myriad races, you can already obtain benefits almost unscrupulously. That's true. Zhou smiled. Is Your Excellency Regal interested in going to the Divine Kingdom Star with me? Octavel suddenly said. Zhou naturally knew that the other party was referring to the projection of the Divine Kingdom Star in the cosmos, which was the Divine Kingdom Star above his head. He didn't sense any evil intentions from the other party. Even if he had evil intentions, he probably wouldn't be able to do anything to him with his current strength and means. Therefore, he thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Octavel smiled. He looked at Elizariel and said, Your Majesty, come with us. Yes, Your Excellency. Elizariel said respectfully. Then, the three gods flew into the Divine Kingdom stars in the sky and sat down in an emerald green palace. Your Excellency must have something to say for me to come here, right? Zhou did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. There is indeed a small matter that I would like to ask Your Majesty for help with. Octavel said and looked at Elizariel. Your Excellency Regal, you also know that Elizariel wants to upgrade this Elven Empire to the first Elven Divine Kingdom. And I had a good personal relationship with an elder of the elves, so I became one of the true god-tier worshippers of their Elven Empire. Even though the other two true god-tier cultivators weren't found in the beginning, the other two true gods were already found when the fragment of the spirit-nurturing stone seed was recovered. When Zhou heard this, a look of surprise appeared on his face. This small fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts was actually related to whether the Elven Empire could find the other two true god-tier offerings. Since this fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts is so important, you still dare to go out at this time. Wait. Zhou finally understood, no wonder she returned so early. It seems that Your Excellency Regal already knows. Octavel smiled. Even though on the surface, I make the other god spirits think that I'm going to explore a mystic realm with my good friend. But in fact, this is just an operation of mine to deceive others. The goal is to let those hostile god spirits in the outside world think that I don't value this fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts too much. This world is just so strange. When the owner of the treasure doesn't value this treasure, then even if the other god spirits know that this fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts is also a treasure, they won't pay too much attention to this matter. However, if I pay too much attention to this fragment of the true god-tier divine artifacts, then even if it's a master god tier, they will probably take a few more glances at this fragment of the true god tier divine artifacts. I was the one who covered it up previously. Actually, I've been secretly paying attention to the whereabouts of this fragment of the true god tier divine artifacts. Now that this fragment of the true god tier divine artifact has returned, I naturally appeared immediately. Zhou nodded and did not ask further. Instead, he returned to the original topic. Then, what exactly is that a small matter that Your Excellency mentioned previously? The conditions for advancing to the Divine Kingdom have basically been gathered by the Elven Empire. Next is the most difficult stage. Octavel said solemnly, take down a Divine Kingdom and even help the Regal obtain the position of the Lord of all races. Octavel encouraged with all her might. Elizariel also looked at Zhou expectantly. I see. Zhou smiled and nodded. Then, he suddenly said expressionlessly, I can't help. Octavel and Elizariel were stunned. How could he reject them so easily? Your Excellency Regal, think about it again. As long as we take down the behemoth divine kingdom, we can obtain the treasures of the entire divine kingdom. Moreover, I heard that your excellency is very fond of bloodline items and collecting corpses. As long as you're willing to help us, I can make the decision to give you the corpses of true god-tier worshippers after we kill the true gods of the behemoth divine kingdom. I can give you as many behemoth corpses as you want. In addition, we can also, Your Excellency. Zhou Zhou suddenly stood up and interrupted him. The human race is being besieged by people of foreign races. As one of the leaders of the human race, it's really difficult for me to have a leisurely chat with Your Excellency here. Please forgive me for being rude. I have to return to human territory first. With that, Zhou Zhou teleported and disappeared from the Divine Kingdom star. Octavelle hurriedly searched for Zhou Zhou's aura, but she could not find him. He had a look of pity and helplessness. I originally thought that this common people's regal would be open to an invitation to become our powerful helper since he became famous at a young age and has absolute strength. I didn't expect he to be so cautious. What a pity. With one less true god-tier combat power, there will their Divine Kingdom token. Our plan is to start a war with the Divine Kingdom Lord faction of the Beast race, Behemoth Divine Kingdom. When the time comes, Your Excellency Regal, please appear on the battlefield and help us. As long as Your Excellency is willing to help, after our Elven Divine Kingdom is established, we will definitely be the first to establish friendly diplomatic relations with your Blazing Sun Kingdom. In the future, we can also advance and retreat together. We can probably be many more risks in this Divine Kingdom advancement war. Elizariel also sighed with emotion from the bottom of her heart. He is indeed cautious. It's said that when he first came to the Supreme Continent, he almost never took action. He relied on his subordinates to fight. Later on, after he had the strength of a god spirit, he began to dare to show his talents. After that, he shone uncontrollably, making all the races in the world pay attention to him and even fear him. Octavelle nodded. Looks like I have to find other true god tiers to help. Even though the Behemoth Divine Kingdom is a new Divine Kingdom, it's not easy to deal with. Elizariel nodded in agreement. On the other side, in the galaxy, which was flying in the dark universe, Zhou Zhou sat on the main seat in the captain's room and looked at the heart that was floating in midair. It looked full of vitality and was surrounded by dense natural elements. It was the nature child bloodline of a high-tier deity-level advanced grade. Zhou Zhou took a few glances and chose to absorb it. Chapter 945 Mid-tier deity-level elementary grade chaos. As Zhou Zhou fused with this child of nature bloodline, a warm energy quickly radiated throughout his divine body, making he feel that his chaotic human bloodline had evolved again. He opened his eyes and looked at the text notification in front of him. You have absorbed one child of nature bloodline, high-tier deity-level advanced grade. Your chaos human bloodline has unearthed more potential and advanced to the low-tier deity-level elementary grade. Your six senses powers have been greatly enhanced. You have awakened the mid-tier deity-level elementary grade. Chaos human talent, chaos law talent. You have awakened the high-tier deity-level advanced grade child of nature talent, nature language. You have awakened the high-tier deity-level advanced grade child of nature talent, nature coordination. You have awakened the high-tier deity-level advanced grade child of nature talent, nature elemental control. You have awakened the high-tier deity, advanced grade child of nature talent, all things affinity. You have awakened the high-tier deity, advanced grade child of nature talent, summon the god of oak. You have awakened the high-tier deity, advanced grade child of nature talent, creation elf. You have mastered the common knowledge of the elves. You have grasped the secret inheritance of the elves. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows in surprise. This high-tier deity-level advanced grade bloodline actually allowed his chaos human bloodline to advance to the mid-tier deity level. One had to know that the first demon's bloodline, as the top bloodline of a master god tier advanced grade, could only elevate his chaotic human bloodline from low-tier deity level elementary grade to low-tier deity level advanced grade. Even this did not allow him to break through the bottleneck of the mid-tier deity level and reach the mid-tier deity level bloodline. This was strange. Out of curiosity, he carefully recalled the feeling of his bloodline advancement. After a long while, he finally realized something. So after I absorbed the first demon deep abyss bloodline last time, my chaos human bloodline has already reached the critical point of advancement. This high-tier deity level advanced grades child of nature bloodline is only the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Zhou thought to himself. Then, he opened it to check the specific information of these bloodline awakening abilities. The first was naturally the Chaos Law talent awakened from the Chaos Human bloodline. Race talent name, Chaos Law talent, talent level, mid-tier deity level elementary grade, enhanceable, talent description, the Chaos Humans are the strongest race that cultivates the Chaos Laws. Even Chaos Beasts can't compare to them. When Chaos Humans began to comprehend laws, it was easier for them to comprehend the Chaos Laws. After mastering the Chaos Laws, the Chaos Humans would cultivate the Chaos Laws faster than other life forms. When using the Chaos Law skill, the power of the Chaos Human race's Chaos Law skill would be even stronger. When the Chaos Humans advance to a higher level of God Spirit through the Chaos Laws, there will be a higher chance of success. Chaos Law talent is useless to me. Zhou looked at this talent and shook his head indifferently. If anyone else obtained this talent, they would definitely be overjoyed. This was because the strength of the chaotic laws could be considered one of the best even among the endless laws. However, he walked the supreme laws that transcended the laws of chaos. Cultivate the laws of chaos. Wouldn't it be better for he to find a subject who cultivated the laws of chaos and used the Lord's law skill to control the other party's nomological comprehension and law skill? He didn't mind and looked at the other child of Naturan's racial talents. Race talent name, words of nature, talent level, high-tier deity level advanced grade, talent description, the possessor of the child of nature's bloodline is born with the magical language to communicate with all things in nature. Moreover, most natural creatures are willing to communicate with the child of nature. Racial talent name, nature coordination, talent level, high-tier deity level advanced grade, talent description, the possessor of the child of nature bloodline is born with the ability to coordinate the various energies in the body with the outside world and allow them to coexist harmoniously without conflict. Race talent name, nature elemental control, talent level, high-tier deity level advanced grade, talent description, the possessor of the child of nature bloodline can control any form of natural energy, including but not limited to earth, water, wind, fire, lightning, light, dark, and other natural energy. When controlling these natural energies, the child of nature can control them more meticulously than ordinary life forms. From there, he can perfectly use the natural energies under his control. Race talent name, all things affinity, talent level, high-tier deity level advanced grade, talent description, as the favored child of the laws of nature, the child of nature is born with a natural affinity for all things in nature. It is easier to obtain the various opportunities hidden in nature. Sometimes, he can even obtain the help of the will of nature. Race talent name, summon the god of oak, talent level, high-tier deity level advanced grade, talent description, as the favored child of nature's will, the child of nature is born to receive the protection of nature's will. When the child of nature is in danger, he can summon a high-tier deity level advanced grade god of oak to protect himself. When he is out of danger, the god of oak will return to his own will and continue to serve the nature will until he is summoned by the child of nature again. Race talent name, creation elf, talent level, high-tier deity level advanced grade, talent description, child of nature is both a favored child of nature's will and a top-notch elven bloodline life form. It could use its child of nature sacred blood to create wood element sprites that were loyal to it. The more child of nature sacred blood used, the more precious it would be, and the stronger the wood element sprite created would be, and the higher its potential would be. After Zhou Zhou saw Child of Nature's talent, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. This ability awakened from the Child of Nature bloodline was really not bad. Just summoning the God of Oak made the Child of Nature's bloodline very strong. As for the other faction quests rewards, 300 million faction points and 10,000 legendary tier mist cores were needless to say. Zhou Zhou glanced at the attributes of the 10,000 nature elves. However, to Zhou Zhou's satisfaction, the 10,000 nature elves rewarded by the faction mission were indeed the high elves of the elves. The worst of them were actually legendary tier, and the highest was even a nature elf with potential at the high tier deity level. Zhou Zhou immediately decided to incorporate most of them into the Blazing Sun army, while a small portion would be incorporated into the Heavenly Map army. Zhou Zhou currently had 4 main battle troops and 1 Homeland Defense army under his command. The Homeland Defense army was in charge of the domestic territory and did not have many combat opportunities. It was not suitable for them to quickly increase their strength. These nature elves who urgently needed to convert their potential into strength naturally could not be arranged there. As for the Dragon God army and the Monster army, they only accepted dragons and monsters, which was not suitable for the nature elves. Under such circumstances, the Blazing Sun army and the Heavenly Map army were naturally the best choices. In particular, the bloodline ability of the nature elves was very suitable to be a scout. That was why Zhou Zhou had given a portion of the Heavenly Map army to Wu Tuesday. As for the final reward of raising diplomatic relations with the Elven Empire to the level of worship and obtaining the friendship of the original Elven Empress, Elizariel, at the same time, Elizariel would help him raise his ranking in the King of 10,000 Kings event. These non-material rewards were also very beneficial to the future development of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. However, he had to wait for the benefits to come out. After checking all the rewards, Zhou Zhou recalled what Octavel had said to him previously. He shook his head. Zhou Zhou did not want to get involved in a Divine Kingdom level war just yet. Who knew how many true God-tier existences would be involved in a Divine Kingdom? Furthermore, as a Divine Kingdom level Lord faction, his influence was not as simple as being worshipped by a true God-tier. Even if he was just a newly established Divine Kingdom Lord faction, it was possible for he to use methods at the top of the true God tier or even at the Master God tier level. Even though Zhou Zhou looked extremely glorious now, and even the super experts outside said that he was the strongest God spirit that was comparable to a true God tier, but so what? It was not as if he had reached the peak of true God tier. Zhou Zhou was very clear-headed. Therefore, he didn't agree to Octavel's request. Instead, he said cowardly that he wanted to return to the human race. What true God-tier corpses, true God-tier bloodlines, nothing is more important than my life. When I increase my strength step by step and reach the true God tier or even the Master God tier level. Can't I just get whatever, he says? Zhou Zhou muttered in his heart. He wouldn't be so stupid as to be a suicide squad for others. Chapter 946 High-Tier Deity Territory Fusion Certificate. The galaxy had passed through numerous security checks in the air and arrived at the capital of the Blazing Sun Kingdom while he was thinking. At this moment, other than the Homeland Defense Army, the soldiers and generals of the other armies were not here. Zhou Zhou did not find anyone else. He directly used the spatial passageway in the center of the capital and arrived at the Divine Kingdom. He found the kingdom's golden tablet and took out the regional token of the spirit-nurturing divine domain. He looked at it for a while before placing it on the kingdom's golden tablet in front of him. The next second, a suction force suddenly came from the kingdom's golden tablet and directly sucked this regional token into the golden tablet. A text notification appeared. Congratulations on obtaining a high-tier deity-level regional token, Spirit-Nurturing Divine Domain. You have officially become the regional lord of this region. You have obtained a regional treasure chest. Exclusive to the Sprite Cultivator God Realm, an emerald green treasure chest that was more than a meter long appeared out of thin air in front of Zhou Zhou. The treasure chest was carved with a map of the spirit-nurturing divine domain. When Zhou Zhou looked at it carefully, he realized that he could enlarge the map's perspective, allowing him to see everything in the entire spirit-nurturing divine domain. When he discovered this, he could not help but be surprised. A god spirit-level regional treasure chest is indeed extraordinary. With this high-tier deity-level territory fusion certificate, he would be able to fuse the spirit-nurturing divine domain with the blazing Sun King, thus increasing that even the treasure chest itself has become a treasure. Zhou Zhou marveled. Then, he directly opened the treasure chest. Then, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. This was because this high-tier deity-level treasure chest actually contained not one treasure, but two treasures. One of the treasures was none other than a high-tier deity-level territory fusion certificate. With this high-tier deity-level territory fusion certificate, he would be able to fuse the spirit-nurturing divine domain with the blazing Sun King, thus increasing the level of the blazing Sun King's territory. Good timing. Zhou Zhou looked at this high-tier deity-level territory fusion certificate and a smile appeared on his face. He originally wanted to use the gradeless territory fusion certificate he had obtained from the Myriad Races Lord Battlefield event. He had previously obtained 3 of these items through his activities, but he had never had the chance to use them. He had thought that after obtaining the spirit-nurturing divine domain, a high-tier deity-level territory, he would finally have to use one. Unexpectedly, it still didn't work. I don't know if it's a coincidence to open this thing, or if it's a god spirit-level regional treasure chest. There will always be a corresponding territorial fusion certificate attached, Zhou Zhou pondered. He had a faint intuition that it was most likely the latter. Otherwise, it would be too difficult to obtain a god spirit-level territory fusion certificate. He had conquered many empire-level armies so far. He had not even seen many legendary tier territory fusion certificates, let alone god-tier territory fusion certificates. If a god-tier regional treasure chest could produce a god-tier territory fusion certificate, it would solve the problem of many lords having high-quality regional tokens but being unable to fuse them. Zhou Zhou did not think too much about it. He would know about this when he conquered another god-tier region in the future. He looked at another treasure. In the end, he discovered that it was a high-tier deity-level advanced grade pet egg with potential called Spirit Cicada. Zhou Zhou glanced at it and expressionlessly threw it into the military merit exchange system. He already had Nazario, a master god-tier advanced grade divine pet with the highest potential. Naturally, there was no need to nurture a pet with the potential of a high-tier deity level. Leave it for his soldiers. But then again, judging from the value of the treasures, in the process of conquering other countries' territories, he had opened countless regional treasure chests. In the end, not only was there only one item inside, but most of it was mist core, equipment of the same level and quality in the same area, soldier-type buildings that could recruit a small number of people of foreign races, low-grade territory fusion certificates, mineral resources, and so on. It had been a long time since he had seen such a good treasure chest. Therefore, he was rather satisfied. Then, he didn't waste any time. He directly used the newly opened high-tier deity-level territory fusion certificate and chose to fuse the spirit-nurturing divine domain with the blazing Sun King. The next second, an illusory map appeared in front of him. It was the map of the entire blazing Sun Kingdom. It was roughly divided into 2 parts, one big and one small. The largest was naturally the blazing Sun Kingdom's mainland territory, while the smaller blazing Sun Kingdom's territory was the spirit-nurturing divine domain. A text notification appeared. Please choose the regional territory you want to fuse from the following map. I wonder if I can fuse my territory like this. Zhou Zhou clicked on the spirit-nurturing divine domain and started to feel uneasy. One had to know that the prerequisite for using the territory fusion certificate was to fuse 2 territories, which had to be connected territories. If they were not connected, they could only be fused by constantly connecting the intermediate regions until they were connected. The blazing Sun Kingdom and the spirit-nurturing divine domain were billions of kilometers apart. Could this be connected? Zhou was a little uncertain. Honestly, if he hadn't learned through the spiritual maiden that the spirit-nurturing divine domain wasn't a fixed domain on the ground, but a mystic realm constructed from the divine power of a god spirit who had died in battle, it was possible for it to fuse with an unconnected domain. He probably wouldn't even have the thought of giving it a try. But soon, the nervousness on his face vanished as his expression turned into one of pleasant surprise. This was because he was pleasantly surprised to see that on the map, the spirit-nurturing divine domain, which was an unknown distance away from King of the Blazing Sun, had suddenly disappeared. Then, in the next second, it appeared directly above the Blazing Sun King. Zhou looked forward and saw the outside world through the spatial passageway. A spatial passageway emitting emerald green light had already appeared in the air not far from the spatial passageway of the Divine Kingdom. He could sense it. Through this spatial tunnel, one could enter the spirit-nurturing divine domain. At the same time, rows of new text notifications appear one by one. You have chosen the spirit-nurturing divine domain, high-tier deity-level regional territory, as the target for your royal capital's territory fusion. Fusion in progress. Fusion successful. Congratulations, your territory, the Blazing Sun King City, epic tier regional territory, has successfully fused with the spirit-nurturing divine domain, high-tier deity-level regional territory. Your Blazing Sun King, epic tier, regional territory's level has increased greatly. You have advanced to a high-tier deity-level regional territory. Your territory of the Blazing Sun King, high-tier deity level, has been slightly increased. Your Blazing Sun Desert, white platinum tier, territory has perfectly inherited all the territory resources of the original territory and the fusion territory. The terrain of your royal capital's territory, the Blazing Sun Royal Capital, high-tier deity level, has been greatly improved. A large amount of high-quality vegetation and a large number of high-potential creatures have been added. There is a high chance that God-tier divine-quality vegetation and high-potential creatures with the potential of God spirits will appear. Your energy density and energy level of the Blazing Sun King, high-tier deity level, has now reached the standard of a high-tier deity level regional territory. Please continue to fuse regional territories and increase the level of your regional territories. Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. He wouldn't have to worry about the lack of regional territories for a long time to come. Chapter 947 Commodity. Divine Artifact Forging Apprentices Special Show. He looked down at the majestic Blazing Sun King. He closed his eyes and sensed for a while before opening his eyes. A look of pleasant surprise appeared in his eyes. The energy density and energy level of the Blazing Sun Kingdom has indeed increased greatly. It's already comparable to the energy density and energy level of the spirit-nurturing divine domain. At this level of energy density and energy level, even if my subjects have low potential, they can rely on the rich natural energy to be reborn and forcefully change the upper limit of their potential. This is especially true for babies born later. They can receive the nourishment of the rich natural energy in their mother's body. From the very beginning, they will change their body and soul potential. That way, once they are born, they will have outstanding potential. After such a long time, it can even benefit the subjects under my command for thousands of years. Furthermore, after the spirit-nurturing divine domain fuses with the royal capital, its rich and outstanding energy environment will gradually affect the surrounding environment, causing the energy density and energy level of the surrounding environment to slowly increase. In the end, it might even increase the level of the territory in the surrounding area. Box Novel. Calm Zhou was very satisfied. This spirit-nurturing divine domain would have a profound impact on his territory. Then, he flew down from the sky above the capital and landed in front of the Lord's shop. He took a look inside. What surprised he was that Zhou Qingmin wasn't playing a virtual game. Instead, He was reading a book seriously. Zhou Zhou was greatly comforted. The old man had finally let go of his game. At this moment, Zhou Qingmin also noticed Zhou Zhou coming over. His Majesty is here. Zhou Qingmin placed the book on the table. A dazzlingly colorful book that was sandwiched in it fell down, revealing the title of the book. The Nightmare Realm is divided into secret manuals. It'll teach you to reach the mythical tier rank in 3 days and become a gaming big shot. Zhou Zhou, he should not have had any hope for this old fellow. Are there any goods today? Zhou Zhou asked. Of course there are. And it's not just some new stuff. Zhou Qingmin had dark circles under his eyes, but he acted as if nothing had happened. He quickly took out 3 red boxes from under the counter and placed them on the table. He opened them one by one. Zhou Zhou looked at it. The first red box contained a golden red sun-shaped pendant. Treasure name, Orofa's Blessing Pendant, Treasure Grade, True God Tier Elementary Grade, No Usage Requirements, Treasure Effect. After wearing this treasure, when forging equipment below God Tier quality, there is a 50% chance of quality +1, Treasure Effect. After wearing this treasure, when forging equipment below God Tier quality, there is a 50% chance of quality +1. When forging equipment from the low-tier deity level elementary grade to the high-tier deity level advanced grade, it could increase the success rate of forging by 20%, and there was a 1% chance of quality +1. Treasure Introduction, the God of Sun and Forging accessory that Orofa personally created for his beloved disciple, Jacker. He wanted to use it to increase Jacker's confidence in forging equipment. Jacker had always kept it seriously, but when it came to forging equipment, he, who was extremely proud, rarely used this true God-tier divine artifacts. Good boy, this is a true God-tier divine artifact. Zhou Zhou sighed. This was the first time he had obtained true God-tier divine artifacts from the Lord's shop. Speaking of which, Orofa, the god of sun and forging, was indeed a natural god spirit from the sun star. He was very generous. Treasures at the true God-tier divine artifacts level were actually given to a disciple who had yet to become a god spirit as if they were toys. If news of this got out, who knew how many people would be envious? He looked at the second item and raised his brows. Then, he looked at the third item and realized that these 2 items were actually Jacker's skill books on divine artifact forging. Good God! Today is Jacker's special performance as a divine artifact forging apprentice. Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. He came back to his senses and carefully looked at the skill information of the 2 skill books. Skill name, Sun Sacred Fire Technique, Skill Quality, True God Tier Advanced Grade, Skill Description, a true God Tier fire control technique created by the heavenly god of forging and the sun, Orofa. It allows life forms to control the power of the sun's sacred fire by absorbing the supreme sun's sacred fire scattered in the myriad worlds. The sun's sacred flame's killing power was unparalleled. Moreover, it had an extremely high efficiency in refining raw materials and forging fusion equipment. It was extremely suitable for creating God-tier divine artifacts. Skill name, Supreme Sacred Fire Forging Technique, Skill Quality, True God-tier Advanced Grade, Skill Description, a top-notch true God-tier crafting technique created by Orofa. It can perfectly forge all kinds of raw materials and equipment at the true God tier and below through the refinement of the supreme fire, Sun Sacred Fire. Even raw materials and equipment above the true God tier could be tempered and forged to a certain extent. The only flaw was that the supreme sacred flame forging technique could only enhance the refinement and forging effect of raw materials and equipment with young attributes. There was also a small chance of attaching a trace of the power of the sacred sun flame to the materials and equipment. For materials and equipment of the Yin attribute, if the supreme sacred flame forging technique was forcefully used to forge, there was a higher chance that the material and equipment would be destroyed, and a lower chance that the material and equipment would be turned into young attribute materials and equipment. All 3 of them belong to Jacker, and they're all related to forging. Zhou Zhou smacked his lips. What a pity. If only it could be used by others, then there would immediately be a second divine artifact forging apprentice in his territory. In the future, there might be 2 divine artifact forging apprentices in his territory. Even though Zhou Zhou did not lack divine artifacts, it was naturally best to have such talents, and the more the better. How much mist core would these 3 goods cost? Zhou Zhou asked. True God-tier elementary grade treasure, Orofa's Blessing Pendant. It's worth 50,000 legendary level mist cores. True God-tier advanced grade, Sun Sacred Fire Technique, worth 10,000 legendary tier mist cores. True God-tier advanced grade, Supreme Sacred Fire Forging Technique, worth 15,000 legendary tier mist cores. Zhou Qingmin chuckled. The corners of Zhou Zhou's mouth twitched. It was so expensive. However, with his current wealth, he could indeed easily afford it. Zhou Zhou did not waste any time. He handed 75,000 legendary tier mist cores to the other party and successfully obtained the 3 items. Zhou Zhou placed Orofa's Blessing Pendant in the king's treasure box. In the future, he might even attempt to forge a divine artifact. At that time, this treasure would be of use. As for the last 2 skill books, because they could not be used by others, Zhou Zhou directly learned them. This made some knowledge about how to condense the sun's holy fire and forge divine artifacts appear in his mind. After he roughly went through all the legacies, Zhou Zhou fell into deep thought. Looks like I can first condense some of the sun's sacred flame. Then, I can use the Supreme Sacred Flame Forging Technique to refine my divine artifacts. This way, even if I can't raise the grade of my divine artifacts, I can still make their bodies stronger. Moreover, when they attack, they can also carry a trace of the power of the sun's sacred flame. It can be considered as a small strengthening of my true God-tier divine artifacts. He would do it if he wanted to. At this moment, Bai Yun and the rest had yet to return, so Zhou Zhou simply returned to the divine kingdom and began to condense the sun's sacred fire. Chapter 948 War Gathering. 5 New God Spirits. As the supreme star, the sun star, shone on the myriad worlds, it spread throughout the myriad worlds. It could be said to be everywhere. However, in the myriad worlds, there were very few life forms who controlled the sun's sacred flame. The key was that it was extremely difficult to extract the sun's sacred flame from the light of the sun star. However, Jacker's sun's sacred fire technique had given him an exclusive technique for refining. The sun's sacred fire technique was created by the heavenly god Orofa. As a god born from the sun, his method of refining and condensing the sun's holy fire was naturally extremely authoritative. Box novel. Kong Zhou Zhou only operated it for a while before condensing a fist-sized sun's sacred flame. Even though it's only so big, I'm only tempering it, not forging a new divine artifact. It's enough. He looked at the sacred fire of the sun and was rather satisfied. Then, he took out his universe-destroying blade and began to temper it with the sun's sacred fire. This true God-tier advanced grade divine artifact could be said to be the number 1 offensive divine artifact among the many true God-tier divine artifacts in his hands after all. He would probably use this divine artifact frequently in the future. After tempering this true God-tier divine artifacts, Zhou Zhou planned on tempering the heaven and earth concentric armor, world stepping boots, sword of new dimension creation. After tempering this true God-tier divine artifacts, Zhou Zhou planned on tempering the heaven and earth concentric armor, world stepping boots, sword of new dimension creation. Time passed slowly. The sky gradually darkened. Zhou Zhou, who was refining the universe-destroying blade, suddenly opened his eyes and looked out of the divine kingdom. Outside the divine kingdom, in the blazing sun kingdom, Bai Yun had already led 20 galaxy-victorious squadrons. Soon, the other party brought a large number of generals into the divine kingdom and came in front of Zhou Zhou. Then, he knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, we have successfully returned. Currently, there are already more than 100 trillion human clansmen in the territory of the three human empires who have successfully retreated to the primordial world. According to a legion commander of the Holy Sword Empire, a third of the human race has retreated to the primordial world. I estimate that within 3 days, the entire human race should be able to enter the primordial world. This is the summary of our battle against the enemies of the people of foreign races today. Please take a look, Your Majesty. After Bai Yun finished speaking, she opened her personal terminal and projected the war into the air in front of Zhou Zhou. Today, in order to protect the human race and retreat to the primordial world, Bai Yun and the other soldiers and god spirits had fought a total of 22 billion people of foreign races. These enemies were enhanced by the titles of the King of Lutes and the Strongest Lord. They obtained a total of 360 million legendary tier mist cores, 2,511,000,000 epic tier mist cores, more than 32,056 million extraordinary tier mist cores, more than 52,360,000,000 diamond tier mist cores, more than 65,032,000,000 white platinum tier mist cores, more than 99,088,000,000 yellow gold tier mist cores, more than 246,032,000,000 white silver tier mist cores, and more than 542,090,000,000 green bronze tier mist cores. 106 trillion skill books and 108 equipment, 90,000 trillion units of basic materials, more than 3,080,000,000 units of basic elemental gemstones, more than 10 million units of thunder element gems, more than 120 million units of life elemental gems, more than 150 million units of death elemental gems, 3,090,000,000 origin crystals, 40,209,602 green bronze tier lord talent crystal fragments, 58,816 Holy Spirit tier scarlet divine crystals, more than 110 million units of low-tier deity-level divine crystals, more than 6 million low-tier deity-level divine artifacts and also more than 15 million divine spark fragments, god-tier medicinal herbs, god-tier ingredients, god-tier ores, god-tier blueprints, and other treasures. Then, he looked at the insight defection list and the military strength list. After today, even though Zhou Zhou had used his insight defection on the Chaos Gods race and the Myriad Spirit race, he had not obtained any additional troops. However, the Lords of the Star Alliance gave him many surprises. Previously, after he had become a god spirit, the 100-odd scarlet god spirits that had been immobilized had been tried to instigate insight defection by the Lords of the Star Alliance after being detained. The result was very gratifying. Of the 116 scarlet god spirits, 40 had been insight defection by the 32 Lords of the Star Alliance. Currently, there were still 76 scarlet god spirits that had not been insight defection. There was no need to be anxious about the remaining 76 scarlet god spirits. After the cooldown of the insight defection ended tomorrow, he would carry out the insight defection until all the insight defections were successful. Not bad, not bad. Zhou Zhou was very satisfied with this result. Before today, he had 18 god spirits under his command. Coupled with the 32 god spirits of the Vapolius Pantheon group that he had taken down in the divine battlefield, and the 40 scarlet god spirits that the Star Alliance masters had insight defection on. He now had a total of 90 god spirits under his command. By the time he insight defectioned the remaining scarlet god spirits in the future, the total number of god spirits under his command would directly exceed 100, reaching a total of 162 god spirits. Even though this number was far inferior to the factions of the race alliance that wanted to destroy the human race, however, it could not be underestimated. Apart from that, another group of Lords of the Star Alliance who did not obtain the quota for the insight defection had also given Zhou Zhou 421. 6 million people of foreign race soldiers after following the army to participate in the war with the foreign races today. The total number of soldiers under Zhou Zhou's command was 15,957,371,102. Including the Star Alliance's current total military strength of 3. For 17 billion, Zhou Zhou's total military strength had already reached an astonishing 19.3 billion. Among the troops under his command, excluding the Star Alliance, there were 1,824,059,965 black iron rank soldiers, 2,015,819,633 green bronze tier soldiers, 3,380,574,412 white silver tier soldiers, 3,240,900,967 yellow gold tier soldiers, 256,796,880 white platinum tier soldiers, 1,615,421,698 diamond tier soldiers, 1,065,282,526 extraordinary tier soldiers, 159,236,529 epic tier soldiers and 1,205,920 legendary tier soldiers. As for the god spirits under him, after today's battle, their strength had also increased astonishingly. Among them, Zhe Wu had advanced to a mid-tier deity level advance grade. Guqiao, Qi Xiantian, and Yuan Song had advanced to the mid-tier deity level intermediate grade. Vicky, Bai Yun, Wu Xian, Feng Luo, Suan, and Luo Sheng had all advanced to low-tier deity level advance grade. The strength of the other god spirits had also increased to a certain extent. And what surprised Zhou Zhou was, after today's war, 5 new low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirits had appeared in the Blazing Sun army under his command. These 5 newly advanced low-tier deity-level elementary grade deities had all advanced to the deity realm by purchasing the Book of the God Spirit in the military merit exchange system. The Book of the God Spirit that I obtained is finally starting to work. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. With the first wave of new god spirits, there would be a second wave of new god spirits. There would be more and more god spirits under him in the future. Chapter 949 Preparing to hire an outside world god spirit. Where are the 5 new god spirits? Let me take a look. Zhou Zhou swept his gaze across the generals in front of him and quickly landed on the 5 humans. The 5 newly advanced human god spirits immediately stood up following his words. Greetings, Your Majesty. They knelt on the ground excitedly and bowed respectfully. Yang Zhen, Zhao Dehai, Long Qi, Zhang Feng, and Shi Chueyun. Box novel. Calm, as expected, it's the 5 of you. Previously, when I saw you practicing law skills in the time world, I felt that you had almost mastered your respective law skills and should have reached the threshold of advancement. As expected, I've successfully ascended to godhood. Congratulations. Prime Minister, after the meeting ends, well, hold a national god ascension banquet with them. Well, do it live and let all living beings in and outside the country know that 5 new godly ascension cultivators have appeared in our human race. Zhou Zhou first congratulated the 5 of them, then said to Jing Yuanqi. It was a joyous occasion for a life form in their country to become a god spirit, be it kingdoms, empires, or divine kingdoms. They all had to celebrate, and their Blazing Sun Kingdom was naturally no exception. A nationwide event like the God Ascension Banquet could greatly increase the confidence and cohesion of the country after all. It could also show the strength of the country to the outside world. Not only could it attract foreign geniuses to join, but it could also prevent some thieves from having ill intentions. In short, there were many benefits. It would be a waste of such an opportunity if he did not organize it properly. Yes, Your Majesty. Jing Yuanqi smiled and nodded. In fact, he had the same intention, but since His Majesty had spoken first, there was no need for he to open his mouth again. Thank you for your grace, Your Majesty. The 5 newly advanced god spirits were flattered. They were even more grateful to Zhou Zhou and this country that was filled with vitality. They knew what they were doing. The reason why they could advance to god spirits so quickly and have combat power comparable to veteran god spirits, firstly, with the help of the Book of the God Spirit, it saved them the long process of comprehending the laws. Secondly, with the help of the legendary tier Lord Talent, blessing of the War God, they could avoid the long process of accumulating promotion energy. Secondly, with the help of the legendary tier Lord Talent, blessing of the War God, they could avoid the long process of accumulating promotion energy. Coupled with the other territories and lords, they had the guts to fight a mid-tier deity-level God Spirit when they had just advanced to low-tier deity-level elementary grade. If they were given a full set of divine artifacts, they were confident that they could defeat even a top mid-tier deity-level expert. This was extremely unbelievable for other newly advanced God Spirits. This was because these 5 new God Spirits who came from the human race had battle prowess comparable to those new God Spirits who came from high-level bloodline races. They were only inferior to the new God Spirits from top bloodline races like the original Spirit race, the Chaos Gods race, the Shepherd's God race, and the Myriad Spirit race. Therefore, they felt that they had advanced to become God Spirits because of His Majesty. It actually had nothing to do with them. They even felt that they had been forcefully piled up into a powerful God Spirit by His Majesty with various resources. Coupled with the powerful God Spirits around them, they did not even have a promotion ceremony. Why should they have an additional promotion ceremony as soon as they arrived? Therefore, at this moment, they were even a little terrified. Zhou Zhou's will-like light could tell at a glance what the 5 new God Spirits were thinking. He thought for a moment and looked at Zheng Yuanqi. How about this? After escorting the humans back to the primordial world, we will hold 100 gods meeting in the entire Blazing Sun Kingdom. Take it as a ceremony for all the gods of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. We welcome them to become the worshipped God Spirits of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. When the time comes, we'll hold a God Ascension banquet for all the gods who have advanced in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. At the same time, we'll have a meeting in the middle. Zhou Zhou looked at Heras and the others and teased, if you want to participate, we have enough resources for you to hold a God Ascension banquet. After all, our Blazing Sun Kingdom doesn't lack such resources. His words were magnanimous, and the gods smiled when they heard them. However, Heras was the first to shake his head. My God Ascension banquet has been held tens of thousands of years ago. I can't do this again. I'm not interested either. Yuan Tsong said calmly. Then can you throw me a banquet for my ascension? Vicky asked expectantly. He was a God Spirit from the Ice Demon clan. However, not long after he became a God Spirit, he realized that his kingdom had already been conquered by Zhou Zhou. Then, he was recruited by Zhou Zhou as a subordinate. Following that, he continuously joined the continuous war. The God Ascension Banquet. To Vicky, this only existed in legends, so he was looking forward to it. Of course not. Zhou Zhou said without hesitation. Vicky had been fighting diligently for he, so he naturally couldn't mistreat her. Wasn't it just the God Ascension Banquet? It wouldn't be a problem even if he held it 10 times for him, what more once. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and said, at that time, all the divine spirits who participate in the 100 deities meet will be able to obtain a set of divine artifacts at the composite strength level for free. As soon as he said this, many god spirits were stunned. I already have a set of divine artifacts. Luo Shen whispered. Me too. Feng Luo chimed in. Your Majesty, please save it for the new god spirits in the future. A god spirit said. A mere set of divine artifacts is nothing. You may have your own set of divine artifacts, but do you know you can keep the second set of divine artifacts or use them interchangeably? You don't have to worry about the new god spirits in the future, we are not lacking in divine artifacts for them. Zhou Zhou waved his hand and said nonchalantly. What a joke. If it weren't for the fact that legendary tier soldiers couldn't use chaotic sacred power to control divine artifacts in advance like him, he would have wanted his legendary tier soldiers to each have a divine artifact. Now, He looked at the more than 10,000 divine artifacts and nearly 100 true God-tier divine artifacts in his king's treasure box. He felt a headache coming on. How should he use so many divine artifacts? Lend it to the human race? There were only over 100 god spirits in the human world. After Zhou had lent out each god spirit one divine artifact of the 10,000 pieces he had, there were still more than 9,000 divine artifacts left. How could he lend them out? Should he forcefully stuff them all to these god spirits? I have to find an opportunity to use these divine artifacts, otherwise, it would be a waste of resources. Zhou's heart skipped a beat and he quickly had an idea. Zhou turned towards Zheng Yuanqi. Prime Minister, send out an announcement later on to the entire High Continent, inviting the god spirits of the High Continent and even from the myriad worlds to come to our blazing sun kingdom and become our specially hired god spirit. As long as they are willing to sign an employment contract and be hired by us, and are willing to fight for us, we can rent them a divine artifact and promise them that as long as they are willing to work for us for 10 years, this divine artifact will completely belong to them. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. His Majesty was really generous. Chapter 950 Upgrading the Territory 1. After experiencing the initial shock, Zheng Yuanqi quickly calmed down. His Majesty is too famous and is feared by all races. They want to get rid of him as soon as possible. There are already people of foreign races coveting the human race now. Under such circumstances, I'm afraid there won't be many god spirits who dare to accept our invitation. He said. However, he smiled and continued. No matter how great the threat of the people of foreign races is, it's not as important as the future of the god spirits. There will always be deities like desperados who will come to us to fight for the future and power. The conditions given by His Majesty should be enough to attract them. I'll send someone to do it tonight. Zheng Yuanqi said solemnly. Remember to make sure that the contents of the contract are good. These god spirits who can apply for the job will probably not join our blazing sun kingdom easily. They will only be hired by us like mercenaries. Don't leave any loopholes in the contract for them. Zhou reminded. Yes, Your Majesty. Zheng Yuanqi said respectfully. Box novel. Calm Zhou nodded and looked at Bai Yun. Take the soldiers back to get some rest. The next 2 days of war will only get harder. Today was only the first day that the humans retreated to the primordial world. Many people of foreign races had probably not reacted yet, so they only brought so few soldiers over at the last minute. By the time they reacted and decided to stop the humans from retreating, that would be when the humans would face true danger. It would also be the most dangerous and tiring thing for his soldiers. Yes, Your Majesty, Bai Yun said respectfully. Then, he hesitated for a moment and asked, Your Majesty, should we do the hunting mission for the Eye of the Heaven's anger at the same time? Zhou shook his head and said, First, protect the human race and retreat to the primordial world. We'll talk about the hunting mission of the Eye of the Heaven's anger's target after the human race retreats to the primordial world. Well, accept the territories and subjects left behind by the 3 human empires. It was only the 11th day of the King of 10,000 Kings event, and it was not the time to decide the final victor. So what if he stalled for a few days and let the other party lead for a period of time? With the Eye of the Heaven's anger, Zhou was confident that he could surpass them all in a short period of time and take back first place. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun said respectfully. After that, everyone discussed the development of the future for a while before the temporary war wrap-up meeting ended. After everyone left, Zhou formed the Heaven's anger seal and his consciousness entered an extremely calm state. He began to search for the Eye of the Heaven's anger's hunting target. Even though he had decided to protect the human race to the primordial world before starting the hunt for the Eye of the Heaven's anger, he could not waste the remaining 2 days. He had to take the time to collect more Eye of the Heavens anger targets to prepare for the counter-surpassing operation with faction points in the future. Just as Zhou Zhou entered a state of deep emotion and began to observe the Supreme Continent, he immediately sensed that his current state was abnormal. I feel that, the consumption of energy when I use the Eye of the Heavens anger has decreased even more. Furthermore, the duration of my use of the Eye of the Heavens anger has also become longer, and my observation range has also increased by at least 100 times. Zhou Zhou was shocked. He carefully sensed the changes before gradually realizing the source of the changes. It's because I've become a God spirit and my soul has become a divine soul, so the strength of the Eye of the Heavens anger has increased. In addition, my will like light realm. No, it should be mainly because my will has entered the will like light realm. That's why the effect of the Eye of the Heavens anger has improved by leaps and bounds. In comparison, the effect of advancing to the God Spirit realm on my Eye of the Heavens anger is average. Zhou Zhou pondered. He could feel it. The higher the level of a powerhouse, the more they valued willpower. For example, Abyss will, Heaven will, Immortal World will, Nature will. They no longer called themselves gods, but simply called themselves so and so wills. There was even less of a need to talk about the Supreme Will. The leader of all wills. It ruled the Supreme Universe and the 3,000 heavenly worlds. The Eye of Heaven's annihilation. I'm afraid it's a will-type secret technique. That's why it has such a powerful effect on the advancement of my will realm. Zhou Zhou thought. He clicked his tongue in wonder. He did not expect that the seemingly ordinary ability to find enemies he had obtained from the Bodhi Supreme back then was actually a will-level secret technique. As expected of the strongest event reward from the Supreme Will event back then. His attacks were extraordinary. He didn't think too much about it. He calmed his mind and began to search for a target to hunt. 4 hours later, Zhou Zhou opened his eyes. 112 Eye of the Heavens anger request to kill the target. He took a deep breath and was a little excited. It's almost 20 times more than before. The effect is too terrifying. Zhou Zhou looked excited. If he had relied on the Eye of the Heavens anger to regain first place on the rankings, he would have been 60% confident. However, he was 80% confident now. The effect of the Eye of the Heavens anger had increased so much that he did not even need to rely on faction quests to obtain a large number of faction points by killing a large number of targets. If not for the fact that he was wary of the lords of the top bloodline races and might use some tricks to increase his faction points in the future, Zhou Zhou even had the confidence to say that he was 100% confident of obtaining first place. Including these 112 hunting targets and the 26 targets I already have, I have a total of 138 targets. Even if these goals are only worth 10 million faction points, they can easily obtain 1.3 billion to nearly 1.4 billion points. This is only the first day. In the future, as I use the Eye of the Heavens anger again and again, this number will only increase. Getting first again isn't a dream. Then, he didn't say anything else. He walked out of the Divine Kingdom and went outside, preparing to upgrade his territory. The Life Elemental Gems and Death Elemental Gems he had obtained today could already meet the new requirements for upgrading his territory. Naturally, he had to start upgrading without stopping. Soon. Even though the originally small blessed land here had already become the foundation of the Divine Kingdom, it was not a problem to upgrade his territory. A large number of upgrade materials disappeared in no time. A text notification appeared. Congratulations, your Epic Tier Elementary Grade Lord's Paradise has been upgraded to an Epic Tier Intermediate Grade building. Your territory has been upgraded to an Epic Tier Intermediate Grade territory. Your Epic Tier Elementary Grade Blessed Land Myriad Formation has been upgraded to the Intermediate Epic Tier Blessed Land Myriad Formation. Durability of Territory Stone Tablet increased to 50 billion/50 billion. Your territory has expanded to 1 2 million kilometers times 1, 2 million kilometers times 100,000 kilometers. All fog monsters within the territory of the new territory have been expelled. Scarlet fog will not appear in any of your territories. You have received an upgrade reward, basic building blueprint treasure chest, epic tier intermediate grade. Lord talent notification, the upper limit of the enemy lord's power that you can use insight defection to increase to true god tier advanced grade. Lord talent hint, your monster ranches can be upgraded. Lord talent hint, your mysterious caravan faction has increased. Lord talent hint, the strength of the clergy in your goddess of lives shelter has increased. Chapter 951 Epic Tier Advanced Grade Territory. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly and clicked on the upgrade requirements to upgrade his territory to Epic Tier Advanced Grade. Construction upgrade, 100 trillion units of wood, 100 trillion units of fine sand, 100 trillion units of metal, 100 trillion units of stone, 100,000 epic tier mist core, 100 million origin crystals, 1 billion units of basic elemental gems, 100 million units of thunder element gems, 100 million units of life elemental gems, 100 million units of death elemental gems, 3 other epic tier cities, 1,000 epic tier lifestyle professionals, 10,000 epic tier military professionals, 50 racial heroes. 3 epic tier territory orders. A smile appeared on his face after he finished reading it. This was because he realized that he had satisfied all the conditions listed. Without any hesitation, Zhou Zhou took out 400 trillion units of basic materials, 100,000 epic tier mist cores, 100 million origin crystals, 1 billion basic elemental gems, 300 million high-level elemental gems, and 3 other epic tier territory orders to level up. The next second, all the materials needed to level up disappeared. Box novel. Calm boom. An illusory silver light immediately covered the core of the divine kingdom, which was where the small blessed land was. A moment later, the illusory silver light dissipated. A new text notification appeared. Congratulations, your small epic tier intermediate grade blessed land has been upgraded to an epic tier advanced grade building. Your territory has been upgraded to an epic tier advanced grade territory. Your intermediate epic tier blessed land myriad formation has been upgraded to an epic tier advanced grade blessed land myriad formation. Durability of territory stone tablet increased to 100 billion/100 billion. Your territory has expanded to 1 million kilometers x 1 million kilometers x 100,000 kilometers. All fog monsters within the territory of the new territory have been expelled. Scarlet fog will not appear in any of your territories. You have received an upgrade reward, basic construction blueprint treasure chest, extraordinary tier elementary grade. Lord talent notification, the upper limit of the enemy lord's power that you can use insight defection has reached the upper limit of the lord talent. You can't continue to increase it for the time being. Lord talent hint, your monster ranches can be upgraded. Lord talent hint, your mysterious caravan faction has increased. Lord talent hint, the strength of the clergy in your goddess of lives shelter has increased. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. It felt great to upgrade to an epic tier advanced grade territory in one go. However, with his personal strength, it was actually very normal for him to have a high-level empire. Unfortunately, he had only been in the supreme continent for a short period of time. Therefore, even though his strength had reached the standard, the power levels of the territories under his command could not keep up with his pace for the time being. There was nothing he could do about this. He could not rush it. He could only take it slow. Fortunately, Zhou Zhou was ridiculously strong. He could rely on his own strength to increase the development speed of the entire territory. For other lords of the same level, upgrading their territory twice in a row was definitely something that could make all the lords' jaws drop. However, if they knew that Zhou Zhou's strength was comparable to a true god tier, they would immediately understand. This was the benefit of being extremely powerful. Zhou Zhou looked at the notifications of the 2 batches of territory upgrades in front of him. His gaze quickly landed on the information of insight defection. He was taken aback. Has insight defection reached the upper limit of the Lord Talent? The upper limit of the Lord Talent. Zhou Zhou pondered over these words and quickly had an idea. Perhaps this was the upper limit of the legendary tier Lord Talent, insight defection. In the future, when his insight defection advanced to the mythical tier, unique level of the Lord Talent, this talent might be able to be upgraded again. With his talent as the king of spoils of war, he could at most create spoils of war at the level of an advanced grade Master God tier, but he could not create spoils of war at the level of a supreme god realm. Presumably, when all the Lord Talents were upgraded to the end, their upper limit should be Master God tier advanced grade. Zhou Zhou felt that his guess should be right. He did not think too much about it and looked at the materials needed to upgrade his territory to the legendary tier elementary grade. Construction upgrade, 1,000 trillion units of wood, 1,000 trillion units of fine sand, 1,000 trillion units of metal, 1,000 trillion units of stone, 10,000 legendary tier mist core, 1 billion origin crystals, 10 billion units of basic elemental gems, 1 billion units of thunder element gems, 1 billion units of life elemental gems, 1 billion units of death elemental gems, 1 legendary tier city, 100 legendary tier lifestyle professionals, 1,000 legendary tier military professionals, 100 race heroes, 1 legendary tier territory order. When Zhou Zhou saw this upgrade requirement, he clicked his tongue. Good God! The various upgrade requirements had increased by 10 times. However, he could still satisfy basic materials, mist core, origin crystals, basic elemental gems, thunder element gems, legendary tier lifestyle professionals, military professionals, and racial heroes. However, the life elemental gems, death elemental gems, legendary tier cities, and legendary tier territory tokens were still not enough. A legendary tier city can be easily satisfied after I help the humans of the 3 empires retreat to the primordial world and take over the territories of the 3 human empires. I don't have a legendary tier territory token yet. In addition, life elemental gems and death elemental gems, he was far from the 1 billion units of life elemental gems and 1 billion units of death elemental gems needed to level up. Zhou Zhou looked at the gemstone reserves after his upgrade. He realized that after 2 upgrades, he still had more than 10 million life elemental gems and more than 30 million death elemental gems. He was far from the 1 billion units of life elemental gems and 1 billion units of death elemental gems needed to level up. No wonder the advancement of those kingdoms and empires is measured in 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, or even 1,000,000 years. The requirements for this upgrade are too exaggerated. Zhou Zhou felt helpless and could only give up on the idea of continuing to level up. Then, he sensed the feeling after the territory was upgraded. First and foremost, it was not the territory itself, but his divine kingdom. After experiencing 2 upgrades, the small blessed land that was the foundation of the divine kingdom also increased by 2 levels in a row. With this, the divine kingdom and the divine kingdom world also expanded a lot. Originally, when he was at the epic tier elementary grade, the diameter of his divine kingdom was 90 million kilometers. With the divine kingdom as the core, the diameter of the divine kingdom world was 1 billion light years. Now that he had upgraded to an epic tier advanced grade, the diameter of his divine kingdom had increased from 90 million kilometers to 270 million kilometers. The diameter of his divine kingdom world had increased from 1 billion light-years to 3 billion light-years. Even though this diameter was not as big as the divine kingdom world of an intermediate true god-tier god spirit, it was not far off. However, Zhou Zhou was only a low-tier deity-level elementary grade. In comparison, this improvement could not be said to be exaggerated. As the beneficiary himself, Zhou Zhou felt that the improvement of his divine kingdom world was a little ridiculous. However, this might be the power of a Lord Law God spirit. His current true combat strength was close to the level of an intermediate true god tier after all. As for the size of his divine kingdom world, it was similar to the size of an intermediate true god tier god spirit's divine kingdom world, so he felt that there was no problem. Then, Zhou Zhou called Aliyah over and asked him to call Mu Gu, Zheng Fugue, and Carol Moeli over. He then entered the world of the divine kingdom and took a stroll. It had to be said that the upgraded divine kingdom was much better than before in all aspects, be it construction, environment, energy density, energy level, or so on. The only regret was that the divine kingdom and the divine kingdom world looked empty. I can find an opportunity to create some continents, planets, and so on, to enrich my divine kingdom world. Zhou Zhou looked at his divine kingdom and divine kingdom world and began to ponder. Chapter 952 Upgrading the Gate of Summoning. Upgrading the Lord Talent. 1. As a Lord Law-type God Spirit, he knew a little about the ability to create planets, sun, moon, mountains, and even life. Therefore, it was not a problem to create a prosperous divine kingdom world that was infinitely close to the real world. As for letting a few subjects die and coming to his divine kingdom world to be pilgrims, Zhou Zhou had never even thought about it. Ignoring the fact that he had two heaven-defying resurrection abilities in his territory, it was very difficult for the subjects under him to die in any other way other than dying of old age. In terms of faith alone, a living believer could always provide more and purer faith than a dead believer. Therefore, Zhou Zhou could not wait for the subjects under his command to live forever as long as the heavens. Box novel. The longer he lived, the happier he would be. It would provide him with more and more pure faith. Therefore, even though the divine kingdom and the divine kingdom world in front of him were empty, Zhou Zhou was not unhappy. Instead, he was very gratified. As for the native creatures created in the divine kingdom world, although they could also provide him with faith, they were limited by the limitations of the divine kingdom. They definitely could not provide as much faith as the living beings in the boundless universe outside. However, the advantage of these native believers created by him was that they were stable. Furthermore, they could increase the vitality of the divine kingdom world. It was to prevent outsiders from looking at the divine kingdom world as if it was dead silent. When he came out of the divine kingdom, he discovered that Aliyah was already waiting outside the divine kingdom passageway with Mu Gu and the other two. You guys enter the blazing sun palace first. I'll be right there. Zhou Zhou said to them. Yes, Your Majesty. The three of them said respectfully before flying into the spatial entrance beside the divine kingdom passageway. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he flew directly to the gate of summoning. Zhou Zhou looked at the tall gate of summoning in front of him. With a thought, he consumed 2 trillion units of basic materials and 1,000 epic tier mist cores to upgrade the gate of summoning to the intermediate grade epic tier. A text notification appeared. Congratulations, your gate of summoning has been upgraded to an epic tier intermediate grade building. You can summon 900 subjects every day. You will summon 700 professionals every day. Prompt, under the influence of the unique title of the race, Glory of the Pioneer 7, you can summon 36,000 subjects every day. You will summon 708 professionals every day. Zhou Zhou's expression did not change when he saw this. He directly opened the upgrade requirements for the next level. Building upgrade, 1 trillion units of wood, 1 trillion units of fine sand, 1 trillion units of metal, 1 trillion units of stone, 3,000 epic tier mist core, territory level upgraded to epic tier advanced grade. After he read it and knew that he could continue upgrading, he did not hesitate to upgrade the gate of summoning again. The text notification appeared again. Congratulations, your gate of summoning has been upgraded to an epic tier advanced grade building. You can summon 1,000 subjects every day. You will summon 800 professionals every day. Prompt: under the influence of the unique title of the race, Glory of the Pioneer 7, you can summon 44,000 subjects every day. You will summon 808 professionals every day. After reading it, Zhou nodded slightly. After the gate of summoning was upgraded to an epic tier advanced grade, the number of basic summoning subjects had reached 5,500. After being buffed by the Glory of the Pioneer 7, it directly increased by 8 times, becoming 44,000 people. Even though this was nothing to the Blazing Sun Kingdom, which received hundreds of millions of refugees every day, he was still quite happy. Epic tier advanced grade. I'm not far from the low-tier deity level elementary grade summoning gate. When I upgrade the gate of summoning to the low-tier deity level elementary grade, I can summon a fixed batch of god spirits every day as my subordinates. Zhou nodded in satisfaction. When the time came, this was the time when the gate of summoning truly exerted its power. Following that, his body was in a daze as he vanished from the spot. In a small world, at the Blazing Sun Palace, on the throne, Mu Gu, Zheng Fugue, and Carol Moeli were waiting respectfully below the hall. Even though Zhou was not on the throne, they did not slack off at all. It was as if their king was sitting on that throne. At this moment, Zhou slowly appeared on the throne and casually sat on it. Same rules. Tell me about your respective improvements. Let this king understand what benefits this king has really gained from this upgrade. Zhou said casually. Hearing this, Mu Gu was the first to stand up. Your Majesty, I am now the owner of an epic tier advanced grade ranch. In addition, the number of monster shepherds under me has increased from 100,000 to 500,000. The number of monster ranches in my ranchland plain has also increased from 1,000 to 2,500. Moreover, the maximum capacity of each monster ranch has increased from 1.5 million to 2.5 million. Moreover, my ranchland plain has also been upgraded. The size of the main continent has increased from more than 50 million square kilometers to 200 million square kilometers. He said respectfully. Zhou nodded in satisfaction. These 2 levels were not bad. There were 2,500 monster ranches, and each monster ranch had 2.5 million ranch monsters. Which meant the entire ranchland plain of Magoo could create 6.25 billion ranch monsters in a day. With so many ranch monsters, the resources that could be produced were simply unimaginable. Zhou thought for a moment and said, use 800 of the 1,000 new monster ranches to nurture the Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers. The remaining 200 monster ranches will be used to nurture the Violent Storm Demon Spirit. Yes, Your Majesty. Mu Gu obeyed respectfully. Zhou nodded. As such, among his 2,500 monster ranches, there were a total of 1,800 monster ranches nurturing Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers. 500 monster ranches to nurture the Violent Storm Demon Spirit. The other 200 monster ranches continued to nurture the Mechanical Fear Falcon, the Iron-Eating Bear, and the Withered Tree. This way, he would be able to obtain 13.5 billion Yellow Talisman Dao soldier recruitment books, 13.5 billion Yellow Talisman Dao soldier class change certificate, 3.75 trillion Violent Storm Spirit recruitment books, and 3.75 trillion Violent Storm Spirit class change certificate. In other words, in just a day, he could directly obtain nearly 20 billion soldiers. At the thought of this, Zhou's breathing could not help but quicken. One had to know that the total number of soldiers under he was only 15.9 billion. Including the soldiers of the Star Alliance, it was only about 19.3 billion. In the end, the upgrade of the Monster Ranch directly made the number of soldier recruitment books it produced in a day almost comparable to his total military strength. Exaggeration. This was too exaggerated. Zhou sighed inwardly. Every upgrade of the Monster Ranch had never disappointed him. Chapter 953 Lord Talent Improvement. The price of resurrecting a true god tier. After Mu Gu left, Zheng Fugui stepped forward. Your Majesty, the number of mysterious merchants has increased from 500,000 to 2 million. The number of carriages transporting goods has also increased to 2 million. Also, all the mysterious merchants' abilities have been upgraded to Epic Tier Advanced Grade. The internal space of each mysterious merchant's mysterious ring has also increased from the original 50 million cubic meters to 200 million cubic meters. In the end, our treasure hunting ability increased again. If nothing goes wrong, we can basically bring back 2 or 3 treasures when we go out to do business in the future. Box novel. Calm, not bad. A smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face again. Now that his territory was getting larger and larger, he could produce more and more territorial goods. It was the time for the trade industry to develop rapidly. At this time, the mysterious merchant's ability had improved. Not only could he exchange goods from the Sun Kingdom and carry out large-scale trade activities, but it could also bring astonishing financial and tax revenue to his territory. While he had obtained hundreds of millions of mist cores in one war, his expenditure was also high. Nearly 20 billion soldiers would have to spend a huge amount of mist core just for food every day. Not to mention that with the upgrade of the monster ranch, nearly 20 billion new people would appear in his territory every day. Every time this new population increased, it meant that the Blazing Sun Kingdom's financial expenditure would increase by a large margin. Therefore, even though the Blazing Sun Kingdom's daily income was extremely high, their expenses were also extremely high. In fact, if the Blazing Sun Kingdom did not carry out any income-generating activities from now on and only carried out daily expenditure activities to support the soldiers and subjects under its command, the Blazing Sun Kingdom would fall into a financial crisis in less than a month. Of course, this was just a hypothetical. The Blazing Sun Kingdom naturally wouldn't not do anything to increase their income. Even if they disregarded the greatest gains from the war, the Blazing Sun Kingdom already had many sources of income that could be said to be pillars. Whether it was the daily income of the Monster Ranch, the income of the Jade Sun Tree, the income of the crops, the normal business tax income, or even the income of the virtual game business that had just risen, each of these 5 incomes could support the current Blazing Sun Kingdom. Not to mention other income channels, such as tourism, food, clothing, and technological products. It was these large and small sources of income that allowed the Blazing Sun Kingdom's finances to maintain an extremely high surplus. For now, not to mention 20 billion, it was probably only when there were 200 billion soldiers and trillions of subjects that the Blazing Sun Kingdom's financial income would begin to become strenuous. Of course, if Zhou Zhou was willing to sell the divine artifact in his hands, it would be another matter. Those tens of millions of divine artifacts and nearly 100 true god-tier divine artifacts were Zhou Zhou's greatest fixed assets and wealth. However, unless the Blazing Sun Kingdom was unable to make ends meet, Zhou Zhou did not intend to sell these divine artifacts. He looked at Carol Moeli and then his expression changed slightly. This was because he could actually sense the aura of a true god tier from the other party. Your Majesty, the shelter of the Goddess of Life now has a total of 500 million clergymen, 500 million priests, 500 million nuns, and 5 billion holy knights of life. My strength has advanced to the true god tier elementary grade. Carol Moeli smiled. As soon as these words were spoken, other than Zhou Zhou, Mu Gu and Zheng Fugui were also taken aback. Carol Moeli had become a true god-tier god spirit. This should be the first true god tier in the entire Blazing Sun Kingdom, right? Even though His Majesty had the battle prowess of a true god tier elementary grade and was even close to an intermediate true god tier, all the races knew that His Majesty's true strength was only at the low-tier deity level elementary grade after all. This set off the terror of the common people's Regal's future. Even low-tier deity level elementary grade was like this. If he really reached the true god tier, wouldn't he go against the master god tier? Zhou Zhou nodded with a smile after hearing Carol Moella's words. My blazing sun kingdom has finally given birth to a true god-tier expert. Congratulations. Unfortunately, if I want you to take action, I still have to pay. Furthermore, it's a true god-tier divine crystals or a Holy Spirit tier heart of faith. Towards the end, he pretended to be helpless. The shelter of the goddess of life was Zhou Zhou's personal lord talent. However, it was just like the night temple. It only gave this network resource to Zhou Zhou so that he could spend some money to use it. And he didn't directly transfer all the connections to Zhou Zhou's name and let he control them unconditionally. If that was the case, he would have long become his subordinate. However, even so, Zhou Zhou really did not lack true god-tier mist cores or Holy Spirit faith cores. Therefore, it was not a big problem to hire Carol Moeli, who was a lower true god tier. He just needed to pay attention to the frequency. Carol Moeli only smiled and didn't dare to say anything. As the creator of the Lord's laws, he was a direct subordinate of the goddess of life. Even though he was also a fanatic believer of His Majesty, he really wanted to work for His Majesty for free. However, he really didn't have any authority. He really had no choice. Zhou Zhou was still sizing up Carol Moeli. He knew Carol Moella's difficulties, so he naturally wouldn't blame he for having no choice. He looked at Carol Moeli because he suddenly had another thought. Can you revive a true god tier now? Zhou Zhou suddenly asked. Yes, Your Majesty. Carol Moeli didn't deny it. However, he hesitated for a moment before saying, however, the price is very high. At what price? Zhou Zhou immediately asked. I'm now a cardinal below the true god tier. I'm comparable to the Pope of some churches in the boundless universe. With my current ability, I can resurrect god spirits below the true god tier at most. The basic conditions for resurrecting a low-level true god tier god spirit are 100,000 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals, 100 low-level true god tier elementary grade divine crystals, and 1 true god tier intrinsic item. Apart from that, to cast the great resurrection spell at the true god tier level, we have to invite the goddess of life herself. Otherwise, the divine power clone that the goddess of life descends will not be able to withstand the divine power requirement to cast the great resurrection spell. With my current strength, I have to rest for at least a year to use a great resurrection spell of this level. Of course, I can shorten this time if I use some true god tier supplements. Carol Moeli said truthfully. Zhou Zhou nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 954 The Crimson Law. Nearly 40 billion soldiers. The price of resurrecting a true god tier was indeed terrifying. He had 100 true god tier elementary grade divine crystals. Original items usually referred to treasures related to the life of a true god tier. For example, a divine artifact that recognized its master or a part of a true god tier's divine body. If he was lucky, there was a high chance that he could find it. On the other hand, 100,000 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals were more terrifying. A Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystal represented a Holy Spirit tier believer in reality. Box novel. Com 100,000 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals represented 100,000 Holy Spirit tier believers. With so many Holy Spirits dying and taking out Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals to use, even Master Gods would feel the pinch, let alone true gods. In fact, if a Master God tier suffered such a loss, they would probably be furious and even be willing to start a Master God tier level war. Even for Zhou Zhou, who had the King of Loots, 100,000 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals also represented the spoils of war that 100,000 fanatic believer level enemies had obtained from his hands. Such a price was not small. This was the difficulty of resurrecting a true god tier. Zhou Zhou sighed inwardly. He had originally thought that if he had enough Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals, he might be able to revive the Buddha Lord. This way, he could also increase the combat power of a true god tier for the human race. But from the looks of it now, it probably wouldn't work. He only had 70,000 to 80,000 Holy Spirit tier faith divine crystals. He could not even revive a true god tier elementary grade god spirit. Not to mention reviving a true god tier intermediate grade existence like the Buddha Lord. However, even so, with Carol Moella's current strength as a true god tier elementary grade, she could revive any god spirit in his territory. In his current territory, other than Carol Moelle, who had just been born, there were no other true god tier existences after all. Other than him, any god spirit in the territory wouldn't have to worry about death in the future. As for Zhou Zhou himself, as an existence who also knew the great resurrection spell, he could sense that the price of resurrecting himself was almost equivalent to resurrecting a true god tier. Therefore, he didn't expect Carol Moelle to revive him for the time being. Fortunately, as long as he didn't leave the Supreme Continent, there shouldn't be any existence in the entire Supreme Continent that could beat he to the point where he needed to be resurrected. Then, Zhou Zhou chatted with them for a while before letting them leave. As for Zhou Zhou, he returned to the Divine Kingdom's Myriad Ingot Palace and entered the time world of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to begin his cultivation. After entering the divine body of Nazario, Zhou Zhou had more understanding of the Lord's law and the law governed by the Lord's law. He felt that he was not far from the low-tier deity-level intermediate grade god spirit. The night passed uneventfully. The next morning, Zhou Zhou walked out of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace and went straight to Mugus Palace not far away. The Patriarchal Division. This was Mugus' official base. It was also Mugus' usual office and resting place. When Zhou Zhou arrived, he saw Mugu sitting cross-legged on a scarlet mat. Strands of scarlet aura surrounded he as a distorted and crazy nomological aura emitted from him. However, his expression was very calm, forming a sharp contrast with the aura of laws on him. The Crimson Law. Zhou Zhou muttered. What was the Crimson Law? As a Lord God Spirit who ruled over the Mu Valley, Zhou Zhou had some understanding of this law. If the universe was a life, then, his normal personality, which was usually displayed in front of outsiders, was equivalent to the endless laws governed by the Lord's laws and the Lord's laws. And being oppressed by reality, unknown to outsiders, the twisted personality hidden deep in the depths of human nature, suppressed, was the Crimson Rule. The two of them complemented each other and restrained each other's hostility. Together, they formed the unique life form of the universe. According to the heritage records in his bloodline, the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord had been fighting each other since the beginning of the primordial chaos. This continued until now and gradually formed the current situation. In fact, in the beginning, the battle between the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord had always been on par. In fact, the Supreme Will even had the upper hand and suppressed the Crimson Overlord. However, for some unknown reason, the Crimson Overlord's power suddenly increased greatly. It actually suppressed the Supreme Will and even invaded more than half of the myriad worlds under the Supreme Will. In the end, more than half of the Supreme Will's headquarters was invaded by the Crimson Overlord. Seeing that the local lords that he had nurtured were unable to resist the invasion of the Crimson Overlord, the Supreme Will gave up on the idea of selecting the Lord of all races from among them. Then, he started this Lord of all races contest and wanted to choose the Lord of all races from the various races in the myriad worlds. Only then did Zhou Zhou have the chance to come to the Supreme Continent. Speaking of which, Zhou Zhou might even have to thank the Crimson Overlord. If not for the Crimson Overlord suddenly increasing the pressure on the Supreme Will, Zhou Zhou might not have been able to come into contact with supernatural powers until his death and would not have seen such a magnificent era of 10,000 races fighting for supremacy. He shook his head and threw away the messy thoughts in his mind. At this moment, Mu Gu opened his eyes and saw Zhou Zhou immediately. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Mu Gu immediately stood up and said respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded. Has Bai Yun already led the troops in? Yes, Your Majesty. Mu Gu nodded and said, it will probably be over very soon. It's already over. Yes, Your Majesty. Mu Gu nodded and said, it will probably be over very soon. It's already over. The next second, a figure flew out of Mu Gu's palm and quickly returned to its normal size before landing on the ground beside him. It was Bai Yun. At this moment, Bai Yun's face was filled with excitement. But soon, he saw Zhou Zhou beside her. He hurriedly said respectfully, Greetings, Your Majesty. Have you cleaned up the ranchland plain? Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. It's been liquidated. Bai Yun nodded and handed a spatial ring to Zhou Zhou. This is the spoils of war of all the ranch monsters. Please take a look, Your Majesty. The internal world of the 20 galaxy ships became crowded almost instantly. Zhou Zhou took the spatial ring and entered it with his spiritual will. Then, he ignored the other huge amount of loots and looked directly at the 4 mountain-like books. These 4 books were the recruitment books and class change certificates that he had been looking forward to for a long time. He held back the excitement in his heart and scanned these recruitment books and class change certificates with his spiritual will. After obtaining the exact number, a smile finally appeared on his face. 13, 5 billion, Yellow Talisman Dao Soldier Recruitment Books, 13, 5 billion, Yellow Talisman Dao Soldier Class Change Certificate, 3, 75 trillion, Violent Storm Spirit Recruitment Books, and 3, 75 trillion, Violent Storm Spirit Class Change Certificate. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Then, he brought the recruitment books and class change certificates to the gate of summoning and threw them in. He called for 20 galaxy ships and got all the soldiers to appear in the inner world of the galaxy. Then, he used 100 epic tier mist cores to summon all the soldiers at once. In an instant, the internal world of the 20 galaxy ships became crowded almost instantly. All the soldiers were among them. Even though they were all black iron level recruits, they exuded an extraordinary aura. They had strict military discipline, consciously stood in line and looked orderly. Zhou Zhou looked at these new recruits and nodded in satisfaction. He originally had 15,957,371,102 soldiers under him. With these 17,250,000,000 new recruits, his number of soldiers directly exceeded 30 billion, reaching a terrifying 33,273,371,102 soldiers. Together with the Star Alliance's 3,417 million soldiers. He had nearly 40 billion soldiers under his command now. Even though most of them were new recruits, when they gathered together, just the accumulation of their numbers was enough to possess extremely terrifying combat strength. Chapter 955 Time Mage. Dragon Tamer. Time Mage's special products. Very good. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. That was 6 billion troops. This was already comparable to the entire military strength of some powerful high-level empire-level lord factions without looking at the strength of the recruits. Then, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he wanted to summon today's subject share of the Gate of Summoning. Soon, the 44,000 new subjects quickly walked out of the Gate of Summoning after Zhou Zhou spent 100 epic tier mist cores to accelerate. Box Novel. Calm, greetings, my lord, X44000. The 44,000 new subjects said respectfully. Welcome to the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, he asked all the professionals to stand up and realized that he had summoned a total of 356 professionals. Among them were 1 corrupt epic tier advanced grade mage, 1 epic tier advanced home guard, 1 epic tier advanced diamond monk, 1 epic tier advanced grade wizard, 1 epic tier advanced grade architect, 1 epic tier advanced grade array master, 1 Epic Tier Advanced Time Mage, and 1 Epic Tier Advanced Dragon Tamer. The rest were life professionals and combat professionals below the Epic Tier Intermediate grade. After Zhou Zhou looked at the top-notch professionals summoned, his gaze fell on the last 2 professionals, and he could not help but raise his eyebrows slightly. Time mages were extremely rare and powerful mage-type professions that could control time. Only professionals who had contracted dragons were qualified to be dragon tamers. Zhou Zhou looked at a beautiful woman with a shrunken elf dragon on her shoulder and fell into deep thought. Other than time mages and dragon tamers, most of the others are powerful and rare professions. Could it be that as my territory level increases, the professionals summoned by my glory of the Pioneer 7 will gradually become rare and powerful? Zhou Zhou nodded in happiness. If that was the case, it was definitely a good thing. After that, he directly asked Bai Yun and the others to leave the Blazing Sun Kingdom and head to the territories of the 3 human empires to protect the human subjects and retreat to the primordial world. And he came to the Lord's shop. As soon as he arrived, he saw that Zhou Qingmin wasn't playing games. Instead, he was sitting obediently in front of the counter. When he saw him arrive, he even smiled at him. "You're not playing games." Zhou Zhou was shocked. "Did the sun rise from the west today? I've gradually gotten used to the time when your majesty arrives here, so I specially made time to wait for your majesty to arrive. I'll go play games after your majesty leaves," Zhou Qingmin said. Zhou Zhou was about to nod in satisfaction when he heard Zhou Qingmin suddenly mutter softly, "This way, I won't have to worry about being interrupted halfway through the game." Zhou Zhou's face darkened. So I'm delaying his gaming time? He didn't say anything else and knocked on the counter in front of him. Zhou Qingmin immediately took out 3 golden boxes from under the counter with a smile and opened them one by one. Zhou Zhou looked at it. In the end, he realized that the 3 items today were all talent crystals. He looked at them one by one. Talent, momentum, talent effect. You have a talent with regards to time. You can sense the flow of time and the deeper dynamics of time. Talent, time freeze, talent effect. You have a talent in time and can simply control the power of time to freeze time in a certain area. The stronger one was, the longer one would be frozen. If not, the shorter it would be. Talent, time reversal, talent effect. You have a talent in time and can simply control the power of time to freeze time in a certain area. The stronger one was, the longer the time needed to go back. If not, the shorter it would be. Zhou Zhou looked at the 3 talents and fell into deep thought. Wasn't this the talent of the time mage he had just summoned? It was a divine artifact forging apprentice show yesterday and it was a time mage show today. Old Zhou, the goods today are not very good. Zhou Zhou looked up at Zhou Qingmin and said unhappily. He already had a time god spirit under him. With the power of the Lord's laws, how could he be lacking in these time talents? It's already not bad. Zhou Qingmin smiled and said, if these 3 goods were placed in the outside world, any one of them would be snatched up by all living beings. Even god spirits would be interested in these 3 goods. After all, this is the mighty power of time. Who wouldn't want to get their hands on them? Zhou Zhou was speechless. There was indeed nothing wrong with what he said. Among the many elemental powers, time and space were definitely top-notch elemental powers. Once mastered, its power was extremely terrifying. If he could use the power of time and space to become a god spirit, he could basically crush god spirits of the same level. But Zhou Zhou looked at the time freeze, time backtrack, time acceleration, and time deceleration among his many law skills. I know how to solve this question. Zhou Zhou looked up at the sky and sighed. He already knew law skills in this area, so why did he still need time talent? It could not even be considered icing on the cake, probably more like adding feather to a cake. However, since the Lord's shop had already produced these three goods, Zhou Zhou had nothing to say. He could not return the goods after all. How much are these three goods? Talent, momentum, worth 100 legendary tier mist cores. Talent, time freeze. Worth 800 legendary tier mist cores. Talent, time reversal, worth 1,500 legendary tier mist cores. Zhou Qingmin said. It is quite expensive. Zhou Zhou complained in his heart. However, he still took out 2,400 legendary tier mist cores and bought these three items. Then, he used them in front of Zhou Qingmin. Bring it on then, these things could not be used by others, only by oneself after all. Thank you, thank you. Zhou Qingmin chuckled. Then, his expression suddenly became excited. He turned around and quickly returned to his seat, put on the virtual gaming helmet and entered the game again. Seeing this, Zhou Zhou smiled and turned to leave. Then, he did not return to the Divine Kingdom. Instead, after making many turns, he entered the underground and came to an underground prison 10,000 meters below. This underground prison was called the Nine Netherworld Fiend Celestial Prison. It was grayish-black in color and was made of true god-tier materials. It was even mixed with rare materials like the true god-tier, Apocalypse Core, formless true iron, and primordial powder. It could be said to be indestructible. In addition, Zhou Zhou had also used the nine-headed Nightmare Realm Demon God's Heart to set up a true god-tier advanced grade formation, the Nine Realms Demon God Dreamfall Formation. Such a sturdy prison was paired with a true god-tier advanced grade array formation with extremely strong imprisonment abilities. Not to mention ordinary god spirits. Even true god-tier existences would find it difficult to escape once they were suppressed here, and the purpose of this prison was indeed to imprison god spirits. Zhou Zhou came here because he wanted to use the number of incite defections today to incite the gods inside to imprison them. Actually, he could also follow Bai Yun and the others to incite defection and attack the people of foreign races. Those people of foreign races would probably bring at least 30 billion soldiers to attack the human race and stop them from retreating to the primordial world. If Zhou Zhou went to incite defection, he would definitely be able to instigate many soldiers. But firstly, these people of foreign race alliance forces were formed by the alliance of many factions. Zhou Zhou's incite defection could only target one of them. Therefore, even if the incite defection succeeded, it would probably not bring back billions of soldiers. At most, there would only be a few 100 million soldiers. Secondly, the probability of inciting the gods among the billions of soldiers was extremely low. Zhou Zhou had used incite defection so many times, but the number of times he had truly instigated an incite defection to become a god spirit was only once. Thirdly, the number of soldiers was not very important to the current Zhou Zhou. In any case, he did not need to leave the Supreme Continent for the time being. The humans also had to retreat to the primordial world, and he did not need to resist the people of foreign races that would attack in 2 days. Therefore, he was more concerned about the number of god spirits as he planned to use the 2 incite defections on these imprisoned god spirits. Soon, he arrived in front of the imprisoned deity. Chapter 956 Incite Defection Crimson God Spirit. Geralt is about to advance. Zhou Zhou looked at the 13 god spirits in front of him. These 13 god spirits were the god spirits of the Vapolius pantheon who had yet to surrender. At this moment, they were imprisoned in the grayish-black prison. There was no divine power aura on their bodies at all. They were like ordinary life forms. This was the terrifying aspect of the Nine Hell Fiend Celestial Prison. He could suppress the divine power of ordinary god spirits and even true god-tier god spirits. Not only did he not have any hope of escaping, he even had to constantly be in a state of panic and fear after losing his power. At this moment, these god spirits were in this mentality and looked like they were at a loss. Box novel. Calm when Zhou Zhou's figure appeared in front of these god spirits, it was as if they had seen their savior. They pounced over and begged Zhou Zhou for mercy in tears. Your Excellency Regal, please spare me. Am willing to surrender. Am willing to surrender. Your Excellency, I, Argus, am willing to follow you. From now on, I will be irreconcilable with Vapolius. Your Excellency Regal, am willing to be your subject. Please give me a chance. The gods begged for mercy and surrendered. Zhou Zhou looked at them with disappointment in his eyes. This group of god spirits simply did not have any willpower at all. In the future, not to mention advancing to the true god tier, they might not even be able to advance to the high-tier deity level. Living too long didn't seem like a good thing. They no longer had the fighting spirit of not fearing death when they ascended to the god spirit realm. They had already fallen into the eternal life and power of the god spirits. When they encountered a little setback, they could not help but reveal their ugly state. At that moment, Zhou Zhou did not even want to subdue them. He wanted to kill them with a single palm strike and take their spoils of war to pave the way for his legendary tier soldiers to advance in the future. However, after some thought, he gave up on this idea. Never mind. So be it. Fallen gods were also god spirits. It was not a problem for them to be his lackeys. Furthermore, after they joined the Blazing Sun Kingdom, they could use their lord talent to subtly increase their loyalty to themselves and the Blazing Sun Kingdom. As time passed, this kind of betrayal of their leader should not happen again. Are you willing to join my Blazing Sun Kingdom and drive it for me? Zhou Zhou said calmly. Yes, yes. Am willing to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Am willing to fight for His Majesty. His Majesty's glory is our glory. His Majesty's sword is our sword. The deities shouted. Zhou Zhou acknowledged. Say that you're willing to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom. The gods did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly said that they were willing to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Information about these god spirits joining the Blazing Sun Kingdom appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. At this point, these 32 god spirit members of the Vapolius pantheon had all become Zhou Zhou's subordinates. If true god tier Vapolius knew about this, he would probably be infuriated. Originally, he had wanted to use this matter to express goodwill to those high-level bloodline races and even top-notch bloodline races, so as to obtain the investment of those top-notch gods. In the end, it was great. He hadn't gotten any benefits yet, but he didn't have much manpower left. From now on, this true god tier would probably hate Zhou Zhou even more. However, Zhou Zhou did not care about this at all. Before he had provoked this true god tier, he had not been afraid of him, let alone now that the other party was in a lost position. He also had some friendship with Octavel, who had regained control of the complete true god tier. If the other party dared to attack him, Octavel would personally take action on his behalf to avenge the damage to the true god tier. He didn't think too much about it. Zhou Zhou got the soldiers guarding the heavenly prison to open the cell door. After letting them out, he slowly walked towards the heavenly prison where the Scarlet God Spirit was imprisoned. I saved one insight defection. Not bad. In front of the prison where the Scarlet God Spirit was imprisoned. A group of lords from the Star Alliance was there. They stood in front of the prison that imprisoned the Scarlet God Spirits of different factions and were using insight defection, hoping to make these Scarlet God Spirits their subordinates. Yes. I managed to obtain one Scarlet God Spirit through insight defection. I've also insight defection. I'm so envious of the military industry lord. He was lucky just now and seemed to have directly insight defection two Scarlet God Spirits. He is now showing off over there. The one with the best luck should be the Lord of Spiritual Medicine. Previously, I saw that she seemed to have insight defection for Scarlet God Spirits at once. Sigh, am so envious. Why don't I have that fate? This was what Zhou Zhou saw when he arrived. Soon, the lords of the Star Alliance also saw Zhou Zhou. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Your Majesty, you're here." The Lord said respectfully. "Continue the incite defection." Zhou Zhou waved his hand and stroked Linger's hair. Then, a soldier led them to a prison that covered a large area. There were a total of 19 Scarlet God spirits in this prison. They were wearing forbidden archmage robes, and they were all forbidden archmages of the Crimson Empire. Zhou Zhou looked at them and nodded slightly. This was a group of Scarlet God spirits that had been specially prepared for him. The number of incite defection God spirits that the other Star Alliance members faced was not that many. "Are you willing to join this King's Blazing Sun Kingdom? If you're willing, I can spare your lives and give you the same status and authority as other God spirits of the same level. If you have good contributions in the future, you will have all the divine artifacts, divine spark fragments, and even the higher level book of the God Spirit." Zhou Zhou said. When the Scarlet God spirits heard this, they were immediately shocked. They did not expect the other party to be willing to give such a high condition, however, they soon sneered. "A mere divine artifact to get us to betray our supreme faith in Your Excellency the Crimson Overlord? This mere human lord is delusional. Ha ha ha, common people's regal, you can ask your human seniors. Our Scarlet God Spirit has fought with the Supreme Will for countless years. How many of us will take the initiative to surrender to the Lord of your Supreme Will camp? Not to mention a mere human lord like you, even if the Supreme Will comes personally, we will definitely not surrender. Your Excellency Crimson Overlord will definitely destroy the Supreme Will in the future and control the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. Then, he will change the name of the Supreme Great Cosmos to the Crimson Great Cosmos. Your Excellency Crimson Overlord will definitely destroy the Supreme Will in the future and control the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. Then, he will change the name of the Supreme Great Cosmos to the Crimson Great Cosmos." After hearing his words, none of the Scarlet God spirits were moved. They all mocked and ridiculed him. Zhou Zhou's expression was calm, but he sighed inwardly. They were both God spirits. The difference between the God spirits of the Vapolius Pantheon and these Scarlet God spirits was too great. It could be seen from this scene. There was a reason why the Supreme Will was suppressed by the Crimson Overlord. He didn't think too much about it and couldn't be bothered to waste his breath. He directly used incite defection to take down 8 of the forbidden archmages. Then, under the incredulous gazes of the other Scarlet God spirits, he left with the 8 forbidden archmages who were respectful to him. Right on the heels of that, he went to another prison where the Devil God spirits were imprisoned. He used the second incite defection, and 5 Crimson God spirits of the Devil race became his subordinates. The remaining Scarlet God spirits would be left to the Lords of the Star Alliance to instigate incite defection. He had to leave some soup for his subordinates. Just as he was about to bring his incite defection deity out of the 9 realms Fiend Celestial prison and return to the surface. Boom! The sky above the Blazing Sun Kingdom suddenly changed color. The clouds in the sky within a radius of 10 million miles turned blood red, emitting the powerful power of the original sin. Higher up in the starry sky, a blood-red Divine Kingdom star suddenly emitted an extremely resplendent blood-red light that illuminated the myriad worlds. This is, in the capital city, there's a high-tier deity-level God spirit with the original sin law that's about to become a true God tier. Could it be, Your Excellency Gerald? Zhou Zhou muttered when he saw this. Was a 6th true God tier about to appear in the human race? He was stunned for a moment before a smile appeared on his face. This was great news. Chapter 957 Double Level 9 Worlds Divine Demon Fallen Dream Array. Zhou Zhou raised his right hand, and a second 9-headed Nightmare Realm Demon God's heart appeared out of thin air into his palm. He had once obtained a total of 3 9-headed Nightmare Realm Demon God's hearts with the help of the King of Loots. One of them was taken out by the vigilant Zhou Zhou after a true god launched a sneak attack on the blazing Sun Kingdom. He used true god-tier divine crystals as energy to guard the entire blazing Sun Kingdom and prevent enemies from invading or launching a sneak attack. The second one was placed in the 9 Nether Fiend Celestial Prison to suppress prisoners at the god spirit level. The third one remained in his hand. Zhou Zhou felt that now was the time to use it. Box novel. Calm with a thought, he saw the 9-headed nightmare realm demon god's heart suddenly emit dazzling colors. This brilliance illuminated the heavens, and in the blink of an eye, it covered Geralt's surroundings. It also covered the area where Geralt was, including the changing clouds in the sky. As such, there were 2 layers of the 9 realms' great fallen dream array to protect Geralt's advancement to true god tier. This way, unless an existence at the master god tier level or even higher descended, there would basically be no external enemies that would suddenly appear and interrupt Geralt's advancement. After doing all this, a throne appeared out of thin air behind Zhou Zhou. He sat leisurely on the throne and carefully watched the scene of him becoming a true god tier. After doing all this, a throne appeared out of thin air behind Zhou Zhou. He sat leisurely on the throne and carefully watched the scene of him becoming a true god tier. Since Zhou Zhou had encountered such a fortuitous encounter, he naturally had to observe it carefully to accumulate some experience for his future advancement. Zhou Zhou acutely discovered that there were actually countless gazes in the high continent and even the endless heavens as soon as he set up the 9 realms demon god fallen dream array. They wanted to see Geralt's advancement from afar or even across worlds. The owners of these gazes were at least at the god spirit level. There were even terrifying gazes from true god tier and even master god tier level existences. Zhou Zhou could sense that the attitudes of these uninvited gods were both good and evil. There was even no lack of existences who wanted to interrupt Geralt's advancement process. All the civilizations knew that Zhou Zhou was the most powerful competitor for the position of Lord of all Races in the current Lord of all Races competition. Therefore, most of them had malicious intentions towards him. Now that they saw that a new true god tier was about to be born among the humans behind Zhou Zhou, they naturally wanted to stop it. Even if his main body could not come, he had to try to interrupt it from afar. After sensing the thoughts of these existences, before Zhou Zhou could make a move, he saw the 9 worlds demon god fallen dream array that he had just set up reacting on its own. The 9 worlds demon god fallen dream array that protected the entire blazing Sun Kingdom suddenly turned from transparent to colorful and dreamy. On the surface of this colorful array, there were magical and beautiful bubbles floating with all kinds of mortal scenes in them, as if they reflected the lives of life forms. Among the god spirits who had come to spy on Geralt's advancement, the god spirits below the true god tier elementary grade had just come into contact with the surface of this layer of the array, and their divine thoughts seemed to have touched an incomparably sturdy wall. They could no longer enter. As for the divine senses of true god tier existences, after coming into contact with the surface of the 9 worlds divine demon dreamfall array, they only used a little strength to break through the array and enter the array. Then, with a sweep of their divine senses, they discovered Geralt, who was in the cultivation room and had a large number of divine crystals piled up around him. He wanted to borrow the energy in the divine crystals to condense the true god tier body. Seeing this scene, they immediately sneered. The human race is no longer worthy of having a new true god tier. You can only blame your bad luck for being born into an unlucky race like the human race. Interrupt his breakthrough. Don't let him advance successfully. The true god tier divine senses broke through Geralt's defenses one after another. The divine senses rushed into Geralt's divine senses and interrupted his breakthrough. The true god tier divine senses broke through Geralt's defenses one after another. The divine senses rushed into Geralt's divine senses and interrupted his breakthrough. The true god tier spiritual forces laughed when they saw this. Then, they turned around and fled. This human god spirit did not have long to live. There was no need for them to take action next. This human god spirit would die on its own. Even if that common people's regal paid a huge price to cure him, he would have no hope of becoming a true god tier in this life. Their goal had been achieved, and there was no need for them to stay here any longer. Game over. Outside Gerald's cultivation chamber. Zhou stood at the entrance, expressionless as he watched the true god-tier divine senses leave. He looked at Gerald in the secret cultivation room. There was a crown of original sin floating above Gerald's head. His divine consciousness blended with the laws of original sin in the crown of original sin, and his entire body emitted extremely intense ripples of the laws of original sin. He closed his eyes and refined the divine power of the surrounding divine crystals. The aura on his body rose steadily and quickly approached the true god-tier realm. As for the so-called breakthrough, as expected of the small confusion of the 9 worlds divine demon dreamfall array. As a top-notch array formation of a true god-tier advanced grade, even the true god-tier advanced grade god spirits would be confused by the array, let alone the true god-tier intermediate grade and elementary grade god spirits. If not for the fact that Zhou did not want to become enemies with everyone on the high continent for the time being, he could even obliterate the true god-tier spiritual will in the array with a thought, damaging their spiritual will. Now that they had let them go, they would come to their senses later and be afraid of their own methods, so they would not dare to do it again. If they didn't learn their lesson and dared to do it again, Zhou, who had already memorized their aura, might directly attack them the next time. In any case, his divine consciousness was unable to kill this human god spirit who was about to die. If he stayed here and watched the other party die, it would not be good if that common people's regal, with the crown of original sin, a true god-tier divine artifact that contains the laws of original sin, it shouldn't be a problem for Gerald to become a true god-tier. Zhou stopped thinking about it. He looked at Gerald, who was advancing, and fell into deep thought. To Gerald, the law of original sin in the crown of original sin was equivalent to a true god-tier existence that walked the law of original sin, constantly guiding him on the path ahead. Even if this effect was not as good as the Book of the God Spirit, it was close. As long as nothing unexpected happened, there was an 80% chance of Gerald's advancement today. At this moment, 3 figures suddenly appeared behind Zhou. They were the Yellow Emperor's divine power projection, Patriarch Lu, and the 3 true god-tiers of the human race. After the 3 of them appeared, their eyes immediately looked at the advancement phenomenon in the sky. Then, they looked at Gerald, who was meditating and breaking through in the secret cultivation room. It's actually Gerald. He was taken aback before he immediately became excited. He happily said, I felt that this child's future was limitless when he was still a kid. He has indeed confirmed my thoughts. However, I still didn't expect that this child would actually grow to the point of becoming a true god-tier. Even though Gerald is the descendant of the number 1 witch of the human race and the number 1 demon hunter of the human race, and his bloodline is naturally extraordinary, it's still admirable for him to have such achievements now. The Yellow Emperor sighed and said, he has already surpassed the master. Chapter 958 Transaction of the True God-Tier Divine Artifacts. Patriarch Lu was also very happy that Gerald was about to become a true God-Tier God Spirit. He looked at Gerald, and his gaze finally landed on the crown of original sin that was emitting a blood-red glow above Gerald's head. That looks like a true God-Tier Divine Artifacts. Furthermore, they are top-notch true God-Tier Divine Artifacts that are extremely compatible with Gerald's own path. Patriarch Lu was shocked. Yellow Emperor and White River quickly discovered the crown of original sin after Patriarch Lu's reminder. Box novel. Calm, no wonder. The Yellow Emperor was suddenly enlightened and pleasantly surprised. These true God-tier divine artifacts are extremely compatible with Gerald's own God Spirit path. They can indeed guide him to become a true God tier. Furthermore, the grade of this true God tier seems to be that of an advanced grade true God. Amidst his shock, the Yellow Emperor's tone could not help but carry a hint of envy. The law of original sin on him will probably allow Geralt to advance all the way to the advanced grade true god tier without encountering any obstacles. Where did he get this top-notch true god tier divine artifacts? The Yellow Emperor asked curiously. Then, the three deities fell silent for a second before their gazes landed on Zhou. That gaze. It was as if he was looking at a wholesaler of divine artifacts, or Doryman. Zhou, sixth brother, did you receive Geralt's divine artifact? He probed, but he already had an affirmative answer in his heart. This person had previously lent out 10,000 low-level god-tier divine artifacts and 4 true god-tier divine artifacts. This had almost doubled the combat power of the god spirits of the human race. If he were to lend Geralt another true god-tier divine artifacts, even though it would be somewhat unbelievable, it was not something unacceptable. I gave it to him. Zhou thought for a moment and corrected himself. You gave it to Geralt? He cried out. The true god-tier divine artifacts were indeed given to him, Zhou said. Geralt has helped me greatly, so I gave this true god-tier divine artifacts to him as a return gift. Yellow Emperor, Patriarch Lu, and he. Even though there was nothing wrong with it, it still felt unbelievable. That was a true god-tier divine artifacts. He gave it away just because he helped. Actually, we can also help, the Yellow Emperor said with a light cough. How can I help you? Patriarch Lu and he had already rolled up their sleeves and were ready to do it. Zhou did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, after thinking about it, he realized that even though he didn't lack true god-tier combat power now, he might not necessarily have the future. He suddenly thought of something. Your Excellency Yellow Emperor, I heard that even though the human race has led all the humans in the High Continent to retreat to the primordial world, you, Your Excellency Lu, and Your Excellency White River plan to bring some of the high-level combat power of the human race to infiltrate the back of the enemy race and carry out hunting activities, right? That's right. The Yellow Emperor nodded as killing intent flashed across his face. These humans took advantage of the time when our human race was in danger to brazenly attack. Although we, the higher-ups of the human race, don't entangle ourselves with them in order to take into account the overall situation of the human race, it doesn't mean that we ignore the damage they have caused to our human race. After most of the humans in the High Continent retreat to the primordial world, I will bring our human race's legendary tier and god spirit level combat strength out to infiltrate the territory of the people of foreign races to fight and kill. Coincidentally, you lent us a large number of divine artifacts some time ago. We even borrowed 4 true god-tier divine artifacts from you. With these divine artifacts, our strength can be said to have more than doubled. I can make use of these people of foreign races to properly control our new strength after our growth. Patriarch Lu and he also nodded. Are the 3 Your Excellency interested in attacking the true god tier of the people of foreign races? Zhou asked. Attacking a true god tier, the Yellow Emperor and company were stunned. They had never thought of this. A true god tier could be considered a pillar of strength in the myriad worlds. In an ordinary race, true god tier represented the hope of survival. As long as a race with a true god tier guarding it did not take the initiative to provoke a master god tier existence, this race could even last until the end of time. If a true god tier guarding a race was killed by an outsider, then this race would be no different from encountering the end of the world. Before long, it would be invaded by other true god tier factions and annexed mercilessly. From this, it could be seen how important a true god tier was to a race. Did Zhou want them to kill a true god tier of the people of foreign races? They subconsciously wanted to refuse. Doing such a thing was equivalent to fighting to the death with the other race after all. If the true god tier who killed the other party's race successfully took over the other party's faction foundation, it would naturally allow their race's strength to increase greatly. However, if he was not killed, it meant that the other party would definitely fight him to the death. At that time, not to mention the consequences of losing. Even if both sides suffered heavy losses, countless other wolf factions would rush over around the smell of blood and mercilessly bite and kill the injured factions. They could not afford such consequences. However, when they thought of the divine artifact in their hands and the fact that these people of foreign races were stopping them, they felt a little angry. Patriarch Lu and Bai He looked at the Yellow Emperor. The Yellow Emperor pondered for a moment before his expression gradually turned serious. We can fight. We have 4 true God-tier divine artifacts. If all of them are used by Bai He and Patriarch Lu, it will be enough for them to have the strength of an intermediate or even an advanced true god. With the combat power of 2 advanced grade true gods, even if we're unlucky and can't kill the true gods of the people of foreign races, it's not a problem for us to escape. We just have to be careful not to fall into a true god-tier array formation. Patriarch Lu and Bai He thought for a moment and nodded. For true god-tier divine artifacts could indeed allow them to do this. Most importantly, since these people of foreign races dare to find trouble with us, we have to give them a retaliation that will make their hearts ache. Otherwise, everyone will think that they can step on us humans. If that's the case, I'm afraid our human race will be trapped in the primordial world for the rest of our lives and will never rise again. The Yellow Emperor continued. In that case, as long as Patriarch Lu and Your Excellency White River bring back a true god-tier corpse, I can give you a true god-tier divine artifacts. How about that? If you can give me 4 true god-tier corpses, the 4 true god-tier divine artifacts can all belong to Your Excellency. If you can bring me more corpses of true god-tier god spirits, as long as I can extract loots, I can give them to you with a true god-tier divine artifact. Zhou Zhou immediately said. As long as it was a normal true god tier, even if he didn't have any true god tier divine artifacts, he would still have a high tier deity level divine artifact in his hands. As long as he had a high tier deity level divine artifact, Zhou Zhou would be able to obtain 3 low level true god tier divine artifacts with the help of the King of Loots. Therefore, this deal was naturally not a loss to him. Really? Patriarch Lu and Bai He's eyes lit up. Of course it's true, but Your Excellency, you don't have to be anxious. This matter can be taken slowly, especially when it comes to choosing a target. In fact, the true god-tier divine artifacts are already in your hands now. You can use them if you want. Anyway, I've already lent them to you. All you want now is the ownership of them, right? Zhou Zhou said. That's right. Hearing Zhou Zhou's words, Patriarch Lu and Bai He quickly calmed down. At this moment, Aliyah walked over. Your Majesty, there's a young monk called Tathagata outside the king's city. He said that he wants to meet you personally. I see that he has an extraordinary temperament. Even some god spirits seem to be far inferior to he, so I specially came to report to you. Aliyah said respectfully. Tathagata. Zhou Zhou glanced at Gerald, who was still leveling up, and frowned slightly. I really came at the wrong time. Forget it, bring he over. Yes, Your Majesty. Aliyah excused herself and left. Chapter 959 The Arrival of Tathagata. Is Tathagata here? The Yellow Emperor nodded slightly. He might have obtained the Buddha Lord's inheritance, but he was able to leave his original world alone and come to the High Continent alone. Furthermore, he is able to locate us. It seems that he has grasped the Buddha Lord's law of karma inheritance quite well. In the future, at least one top-notch high-tier deity-level expert will appear in the human race. Tathagata might even be able to advance to the true god-tier level and reach the same level as the Buddha Lord. Do you really want this successor of the Buddha Lord's inheritance to be my subject? Zhou Zhou asked. Of course, the Yellow Emperor said with a smile. Your territory has the highest potential for growth. Only when he comes to your territory and becomes your subject can he unleash his potential and heritage the fastest. However, in the future, please part with your love and release he so that he can take over the position of the human Buddhist leader. This is his karma. He can't escape it. Box novel. Calm, sure. Zhou agreed without much hesitation. It was just the status of a subject. To him, it was not worth as much as a black iron tier mist core. Moreover, leaving the successor of the Buddha Lord in his territory, if he could really grow into a super expert of the human race in the future, he could also have some friendship with this expert because of this matter. In short, he would definitely make a profit. Still. Zhou thought for a moment and said, how will the Buddha Lord treat Tathagata if he reappears one day? The three gods were stunned hearing this. Then, Patriarch Lu, who was the most knowledgeable, was the first to react. He said excitedly, are you saying that you're confident that you can revive the Buddha Lord one day? Really? Yellow Emperor and Bai He were immediately excited when they heard this news. They and the Buddha Lord had been good friends for tens of thousands of years. They were also fellow Taoists who protected the human race. The friendship between they could not be described with tens of thousands of books. Previously, when they heard the news of the Buddha Lord's death, even though they did not show any reaction on the surface, the sorrow in their hearts was actually greater than that of the weeping heavenly Bodhisattva of light, Roigar. Now that they suddenly heard that the Buddha Lord could be resurrected, how could they not be excited? It's indeed possible for him to revive in the future. Zhou nodded, then shook his head. But the price is very high. What price? Tell me. The Yellow Emperor and the others immediately asked. They were willing to pay any price for the sake of resurrecting their close friend and allowing the human race to have another true God-tier combat power. The basic conditions for resurrecting a true God-tier elementary grade are 100,000 Holy Spirit tier Faith Divine Crystals, 100 true God-tier elementary grade Divine Crystals, and 1 true God-tier intrinsic item. And if you want to resurrect a true God-tier intermediate grade Buddha Lord, the price will only reach a higher level on this foundation. Items of intrinsic origin can be obtained with the physical relics left behind by the Buddha Lord after his nirvana. Items of intrinsic origin can be obtained with the physical relics left behind by the Buddha Lord after his nirvana. Of course, this won't affect our previous deal of exchanging corpses for divine artifacts. Zhou. When the Yellow Emperor heard this, he immediately grabbed Zhou's hand and said with gratitude and shame, you've sacrificed too much for us humans. As for us, we don't seem to have anything to repay you with. Zhou said with a smile, this is for your human race and also, my human race. This deal wasn't a loss to him. On the contrary, with the King of Lutes, he could earn a large amount of divine crystals, divine artifacts, divine spark fragments, the Book of the God Spirit and other treasures through the corpses brought back by the Yellow Emperor. In other words, in terms of profits alone, he had made a killing. Furthermore, in the future, he might have to fight for the position of Lord of the human race to support him. Therefore, he would treat these contributions as an accumulation of merits for the future patriarch of the human race. At this moment, a handsome young monk walked over from not far away and came in front of them. Greetings, leaders of the human race. He said politely. Tathagata, as the reincarnation of the Buddha Lord, you should know me. Now that you have inherited the Buddha Lord's Dharma inheritance and have great karma with you, what do you think of your future? The Yellow Emperor looked at Tathagata and asked directly. Your Excellency Yellow Emperor. Tathagata put his palms together and said from the bottom of his heart, now that the human race is in great danger and I've inherited the Buddha Lord's inheritance, it's time for me to abide by the Buddha Lord's last wish and step forward bravely to protect the human race with my meager strength. When the crisis of the human race is over, I will return the karma of the Buddha Lord. I plan to travel the myriad worlds and experience the suffering of all living beings to comprehend the profundities of the Buddhist Dharma. Zhou and company looked at each other and nodded. Tathagata, stay with me for the time being and cultivate with me, There are many special things about my territory. You'll know in the future. With me here, I guarantee that you will grow the fastest. You might even reach the achievements that the Buddha Lord had when he was alive. If you work harder, surpassing the Buddha Lord is not an empty promise. Zhou said to him. I'm willing. Tathagata bowed to Zhou. In the next second, his body suddenly trembled. He felt a warm current appear in his heart out of thin air and flow to various parts of his body with the stirring of his heart. Under the influence of this warm current, Tathagata felt as if he had been reborn. He even felt that he could grow to a height that he absolutely could not reach before. Thank you, Your Excellency Common People's Regal. Tathagata knew that he and Zhou had obtained huge benefits and immediately thanked them. It's fine. From today onwards, you are one of us. Zhou looked at him and said with a smile, cultivate well and reach the level of a Buddha Lord as soon as possible. When that time comes, you can leave if you want. If you want to stay, stay. This king will definitely not force you. The regal is broad-minded. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Tathagata said from the bottom of his heart. Only he knew how much he had just benefited. He originally only had the potential of a true God-tier intermediate grade, but after becoming a subject of the common people's regal, his potential actually directly increased by a large level and advanced to the Master God-tier intermediate grade. This meant that he was qualified to break through to the Master God-tier realm in the future. To him, the difficulty of becoming a true God-tier had decreased by more than 10 times. This was a huge karma, but the other party said that he could leave as he pleased and stay as he pleased. He did not ask her to repay him at all. At this moment, Tathagata only wanted to say in his heart, this common people's regal is indeed the strongest lord among the lord of all races. Just his attack and magnanimity far surpassed the other life forms of the myriad races. When the Yellow Emperor and the others saw Tathagata's potential suddenly increase by a large level, their eyes immediately widened. Are we seeing things? This is the potential of a Master God tier. There are actually so many benefits to joining the Blazing Sun Kingdom. At this moment, they all had the thought of converting all the humans, including themselves, into the Blazing Sun Kingdom's household register. In any case, they were all from the human race. It was just a change of identity. What was the big deal? At their level, they were no longer limited to a single country or even a world. What they valued the most was their race and the power they had. As long as these two bottom lines were not touched, they could accept almost anything. What was a mere change in household registration? However, they quickly thought of the Supreme Agreement and immediately became discouraged. The Supreme Agreement would not allow them to openly help the lords of the myriad races in their race. If that was really the case, the Lord of all races competition would no longer be so small. The chaotic war between the various worlds had probably already begun. A large number of Master God tier experts might have already died. They looked at Tathagata and were secretly envious. This successor of the Buddha Lord was quite lucky. First, he had obtained the Buddha Lord's inheritance. Now, he has also obtained the identity of the common people's regal's subject. His future was limitless. Just as they were sighing in their hearts, they saw something else that made their breathing quicken. Chapter 960 The Inheritance of the Master God Tier. Original Sin and the Demon Hunter God, Gerald joining the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Zhou looked at Tathagata thoughtfully. There was a high chance that he would revive the Buddha Lord if he had a chance in the future. At that time, the Buddha Lord would definitely continue to take charge of human Buddhism, and Tathagata would not be able to sit in the position of the Buddha Lord. Since that was the case, he might as well go all out. Let's nurture Tathagata into a top-notch expert of the human race. Wasn't it just a Master God tier inheritance? He was willing to do so. Box novel. Tathagata had received such great help from him. He, who mainly cultivated the law of karma, would definitely repay him. Zhou Zhou flipped his right hand and a book of the God Spirit appeared in his hand. It was the Master God Tier's low-level elementary grade inheritance, the Great Sun God's divine spirit inheritance. Tathagata, are you willing to accept this Master God Tier inheritance? Zhou Zhou asked. When Tathagata saw this Master God Tier inheritance, his body immediately trembled. The Yellow Emperor and company also watched this scene in silence not far away. If it was anyone who was most suitable to use this book of the God Spirit, Tathagata was indeed the most suitable among everyone present. The Yellow Emperor and company were already extremely determined in their nomological paths. Unless it was time to change, they would not easily accept the inheritances of other God spirits. Even though Tathagata had also received the Buddha Lord's inheritance, he had yet to become a God spirit, so he was still malleable. He could completely combine the Buddha Lord's inheritance and the Great Heaven Lord's inheritance to create an even more glorious path. Thank you, Your Holiness. After Tathagata saw the book of the God Spirit, his expression gradually turned solemn after the shock and surprise. While this Master God Tier inheritance represented a bright future, it also represented a huge karma. Once he accepted it, he would definitely return it to the common people's regal Your Excellency in the future. Otherwise, his Buddhist heart would definitely be unstable in the future, and his future path might even collapse. He was naturally unwilling to accept such a future. Still, who could escape karma and be an idle person who did not suffer any tribulations in such a chaotic world? Even the high and mighty Supreme Will would fight the Crimson Overlord to the death, right? Therefore, Tathagata chose to accept this karma. Sure. Your strength will definitely increase rapidly after accepting the Great Sun God's inheritance and fighting alongside my army. Zhou Zhou smiled and handed the book of the God Spirit to Tathagata. After Tathagata received it solemnly, he nodded seriously. I will increase my strength as soon as possible and help Regal as soon as possible. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. At this moment, Zhou Zhou's expression suddenly changed. Then, the Yellow Emperor, Patriarch Lu, and Baihe's expressions also turned to shock. They looked up. Boom! An incomparably majestic and terrifying divine sense descended from the sky and actually broke through the first level of the Nine Worlds Divine Demon Dreamfall Array. However, after a slight pause, it broke through the second level of the Nine Worlds Divine Demon Dreamfall Array again and rushed towards Gerald, who was breaking through. The Yellow Emperor and the others' eyes widened, but their divine bodies were suppressed by this terrifying divine consciousness and could not move. They were filled with grief and indignation. This terrifying divine sense was definitely a Master God Tier. A dignified main God Tier existence actually attacked a human who had just advanced to the true God Tier just to stop the other party from breaking through. How shameless! The Yellow Emperor and company gritted their teeth as they thought. A Master God Tier who could bully the weak could only be described as shameless. At the same time, they had a despairing thought. Gerald's advancement to true God Tier would probably be interrupted. Not only that, Gerald was interrupted by the Master God Tier in the process of advancing to true God Tier. The injuries he suffered during this process were probably much more serious than the injuries he suffered when his advancement process was interrupted by the true God Tier's spiritual will. After this blow, not only would Gerald have no hope of advancing, he might even lose his life. Just as everyone was in despair, a soft sigh sounded. Isn't it inappropriate for a Master God Tier to attack a weakling who has yet to advance to the true God Tier? This voice resounded in the hearts of the Yellow Emperor and the others. At the same time, Zhou Zhou's illusory figure appeared in the depths of their hearts, as if it was going to be engraved in the depths of their hearts forever so that they would remember it forever. This was the power of will. And when Zhou Zhou used the power of his will, that Master God Tier divine sense was immediately easily blocked outside Gerald's cultivation chamber, preventing it from advancing an inch. That Master God Tier, whose whereabouts were unknown, also seemed to have not expected that his mental attack would actually not have any effect. For a moment, there was no other movement. After a while, just as the Yellow Emperor and company were breaking out in cold sweat and feeling uneasy, a sinister voice suddenly sounded. "Will like light. You, a little fellow who has just become a god spirit, actually comprehended the power of will. No wonder you can become a regal and make all races fear you. If it wasn't for the fact that we don't have a direct grudge against each other, I would probably think of ways to get rid of you." Will. The Yellow Emperor and the others were a little dumbfounded. They didn't know what kind of power the will was, so why did this Master God Tier specially mention it? It was as if he valued this power very much. It was just a fluke. Zhou Zhou said calmly. A fluke? The sinister voice chuckled and said, "I'm not interested in whether you've comprehended the power of will. Let me ask you, are you sure you want to protect this high-tier deity-level human and go against me? I'm not protecting this high-tier deity-level human. It's just that your power has invaded my king's city. As the king of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, how can I watch helplessly as your power acts wantonly in my king's city?" Zhou Zhou asked. "I don't like this human. Banish him from your kingdom. This matter has nothing to do with you." The Master God Tier said again. "He didn't do anything. I have no reason to banish him out of thin air. How about this, Your Excellency Master God Tier? After he becomes a true God Tier, I'll talk to he in person. When the time comes, I'll definitely make him leave my Blazing Sun Kingdom and discuss matters with Your Excellency. How about that?" Zhou Zhou said sincerely. When this Master God Tier heard Zhou Zhou's words, he immediately cursed in his heart. He had originally wanted to use his own divine consciousness to interrupt Geralt's advancement and prevent another true God Tier from appearing in the human race to protect this common people's regal and continue to grow. Currently, the civilizations of the 10,000 races all regarded this common people's regal as the strongest opponent for the Lord of all races. In order to prevent the position of the Lord of all races from falling into the hands of this common people's regal, he was invited by a super expert from a certain civilization to interrupt the advancement of this human true God Tier. Unexpectedly, his attack was blocked by the common people's regal's willpower. Who would have thought that a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit who had just become a god spirit had already mastered the power of will that only Master God Tier could master? From the looks of it, he wouldn't be able to use this power of will, however, it was still easy to block his spiritual will attack. After failing to interrupt his advancement, he had wanted to use deceptive words to trick this common people's regal into having a conflict with him and thus opposing him. This way, he would have a chance to attack Zhou Zhou. He did not expect that this common people's regal couldn't even walk the ball. He didn't fall for his words at all. Now, he even said that he would let Geralt leave his territory after he successfully advanced. What was the use of that? Even though his spiritual force could crush the true God Tier's spiritual force because it was mixed with the power of will, it was not to the extent of directly crushing him to death. By the time he successfully advanced and left the Blazing Sun Kingdom, his spiritual will would no longer be able to kill him. He couldn't easily descend to the High Continent because of the Supreme Agreement. This also meant that if he let Geralt go now, he would never have a chance to get rid of him again. This Master God Tier felt even more embarrassed thinking of this. Originally, he thought that it was a small matter that could be easily done. He did not expect that it would actually be blocked by a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit. This was the first time he had suffered such a huge loss from such a small god. Are you sure you don't want to call out the humans inside? I'll be very unhappy if you do this. This Master God Tier's tone was clearly filled with killing intent. He had already given an ultimatum. The Yellow Emperor and company were already sweating profusely. They simply did not dare to imagine the pressure that Zhou Zhou was facing. That was an unknown true Master God Tier. Zhou Zhou had yet to raise his strength to the level of a true God Tier. He was still at the low-tier deity level elementary grade. After Your Excellency Gerald walks out of the cultivation chamber, this king will discuss with him to get him to leave the Blazing Sun Kingdom and settle the matter between you and him with Your Excellency. Zhou Zhou asked. Silence. Utter silence. After an unknown amount of time had passed in this maddening silence, this unknown Master God Tier finally spoke. Very good. Common people's regal. I hope you don't leave the High Continent for the rest of your life. I look forward to meeting you outside the High Continent. After saying that, the Master God Tier God Spirit stayed silent. Zhou Zhou stood on the spot for a while before turning to look at the Yellow Emperor and company. He has already left. I thought that he would at least leave his name behind. I didn't expect him to be so low-key. He left just like that. Zhou Zhou said regretfully. He still wanted to wait until he advanced to the true God-tier realm before fighting him. After hearing Zhou Zhou's words, how could the Yellow Emperor and the others not understand the underlying meaning behind his words? They wiped their foreheads and felt that the sixth speaker was getting bolder and bolder. In the next hour or so, no more God spirits came to cause trouble, nor did any existences at the Master God Tier level appear. This made the Yellow Emperor and the others heave a sigh of relief. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt something and looked at the door of the cultivation chamber. The tightly shut door trembled slightly before it was slowly pushed open. A middle-aged man with a head full of white hair and a scar on his face walked out. He looked experienced. It was Gerald. At this moment, the aura of the true God-tier divine power on his body fluctuated a little. He looked a little unstable. It was obvious that he had just broken through and had yet to completely master his divine power. However, when they saw this scene, Zhou Zhou and company smiled. Congratulations, another true God tier has appeared in our human race. Zhou Zhou was the first to congratulate him. The Yellow Emperor and the others also congratulated him from the bottom of their hearts. Thank you, everyone. Gerald nodded, then looked at Zhou Zhou. He suddenly knelt on one knee and bowed. Original Sin and the Demon Hunter True God Tier God Spirit, Gerald, request to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom and become your Majesty's subject. I wonder if your Majesty is willing. Gerald looked at Zhou Zhou solemnly. Zhou Zhou looked at Gerald and nodded without hesitation. Then, he smiled and said, "Welcome to the Blazing Sun Kingdom." Chapter 961 Zhou Zhou's Promise. Rise. Our Blazing Sun Kingdom is truly like a tiger with wings with a true God-tier God spirit like you around. Zhou Zhou looked at Gerald and sighed in his heart. Strictly speaking, this was the first true God-tier God spirit combat power in his territory. Even though he had the combat power of a true God tier, it was temporarily upgraded by using the Lord Law skill. Carol Moeli might be an actual true God tier, but he was actually a different kind of mercenary. Only Gerald in front of him could be considered a subject that truly obeyed him. Most importantly, with the addition of this actual true God tier combat power, he would definitely be able to greatly increase his strength when he used the Law skill, King, in the future. Box novel. Calm. Even if he couldn't reach the level of a true God tier intermediate grade, it should be infinitely close to it. Your Majesty, you flatter me. Gerald did not dare to be arrogant at all. The person in front of him was a legendary tier powerful enemy who could kill a pseudo-true God tier expert. He could easily kill several terrifying true God tier God spirits in a go as soon as he advanced to a low-tier deity level elementary grade God spirit. His name would resound throughout the myriad worlds in just one or two battles. Furthermore, even though he was in the cultivation chamber and at the critical moment of his advancement, he had not forgotten to observe the situation outside. He saw His Majesty forcing that unknown Master God tier existence to retreat with just a few words, preventing that unknown Master God tier existence from interrupting his advancement process. In the end, he could only say some harsh words and leave unwillingly. If this matter were to spread, it would probably make countless super experts of races and civilizations dumbfounded. A god spirit at the master god tier level was already a super expert in the myriad worlds. Even among the top races like the original spirit race, the chaos gods race, the shepherd's god race, and the myriad spirit race, they were considered top existences. If one of these top races lost a master god tier, their civilization would weaken for hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. There was even a risk of falling below the level of top race civilizations. As for the supreme god realm and higher existences above the master god tier, they basically no longer cared about the matters of the myriad worlds. Which meant, under the circumstances where supreme god realm experts and even stronger experts did not appear, master god tier was the strongest combat power in the myriad worlds. And such a super expert was actually forced back by His Majesty in a few words. How awe-inspiring was that? In comparison, he, a true god tier who had just advanced, really felt that he had nothing to be proud of in front of His Majesty. The crown of original sin was even a gift from His Majesty. After today's incident, it could be said that His Majesty had both helped him become a god and saved his life. How could Gerald not be grateful to His Majesty? At the same time, not far away, the Yellow Emperor and company also watched this scene with emotion. Even though they were a little surprised that Gerald was willing to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom and become the first true god-tier worshipper of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, they felt that it was reasonable when they thought about it. Speaking of which, it was always a good thing for the human race to have a new true god-tier. Still, will the Supreme Agreement allow a true god-tier god spirit to become Zhou-Zhou's subject? Patriarch Lu transmitted his voice to the Yellow Emperor. It should be possible. The Yellow Emperor thought for a moment and nodded. Strictly speaking, it was actually Zhou-Zhou, the Lord of all races, who, without the help of external forces, personally created Gerald's true god-tier status and even saved his life. A true god-tier like Gerald owes Zhou-Zhou too much. Under such circumstances, Gerald naturally has the right to join Zhou-Zhou's Blazing Sun Kingdom. That's good. Patriarch Lu nodded. They walked over, and then the Yellow Emperor smiled and said, "Gerald, now that you're a true god tier, I'll extend another invitation to you. Are you willing to come to the Supreme Council of the human race and become the seventh speaker of the human race?" Patriarch Lu and White River also looked at him. Gerald looked at the Yellow Emperor. After a long time. "I'm under His Majesty's command. I serve His Majesty unconditionally." Gerald spoke slowly. "Are you still resentful about how we humans didn't retrieve your parents' remains back then?" Patriarch Lu asked in a low voice. "I now understand your decision back then," Gerald said. "It's just that I still can't accept it." The Yellow Emperor and company fell silent. "How powerful were your parents?" Zhou-Zhou suddenly asked. Yellow Emperor and the others immediately thought of something when they heard this, and their eyes suddenly lit up. Yes. Zhou-Zhou could resurrect Gerald's parents. This might resolve the conflict between him and the humans. "My parents were high-tier deity-level god spirits," Gerald replied. "Do you have any important items from them?" Zhou-Zhou asked. "After my parents perished, the abyssal forces that killed them once came to my home, wanting to completely eradicate any trace of my parents' bloodline in the world." Gerald smiled bitterly. "If there's really something left behind by my parents, will my flesh and blood do?" "No." Zhou-Zhou shook his head. Life forms could not be used as a resurrection medium for the Great Resurrection spell. If that really happened, the Great Resurrection spell would become an evil technique. Gerald's eyes darkened. However, he suddenly thought of something. He trembled and muttered, "My parents' remains and belongings, oh yes." He immediately looked at Zhou-Zhou with bright eyes. "My parents were killed by Demogorgon, one of the 3 master god-tier giants of the abyss. If there's a place in this world where my parents' belongings must be, it's definitely with Demogorgon. Demogorgon, Zhou-Zhou's eyes were filled with doubt. It's not that I'm rude, but why would a master god-tier existence like Demogorgon deliberately keep your parents' things? His parents were only high-tier deity level while the Demogorgon was a master god-tier existence. The difference in strength and status between the two sides could be said to be like the difference between heaven and earth. Would Demogorgon really keep Geralt's parents' belongings on purpose? He definitely would have. Geralt's eyes were unusually firm. My parents seemed to have a treasure that Demogorgon wanted very much. The reason why Demogorgon wanted to erase all traces of my parents after killing them was likely because of that treasure. Demogorgon's divine kingdom is incomparably powerful. It can be said that he has spies all over the abyss. Logically speaking, he should have long known of my existence. After all, after my parents passed away, I directly changed my profession to a demon hunter and entered the abyss to continuously hunt demons. Destroying my last bloodline should have been an easy task for Demogorgon, but he didn't do so. I guess, he must have obtained the treasures on my parents, which is why, he lost interest in me. That treasure is a relic left behind by my parents. That treasure should be able to revive my parents, right? Geralt looked at Zhou-Zhou, eyes filled with fear and eagerness, but also with anticipation. He was really afraid of getting an answer that he didn't want from Zhou-Zhou. Chapter 962 The Fanatic Believer, Geralt. The target of the eye of the heavens' anger. Sure. Zhou-Zhou gave an affirmative answer, but he looked at Geralt solemnly facing Geralt's gaze. However, the prerequisite is that we can obtain your parents' remains and relics from Demogorgon. Geralt fell silent upon hearing that. Snatching what I want from a master god tier. It sounded extremely difficult. Does it mean that I will never be able to see my parents again in this lifetime? This white-haired man who had just advanced to the true god tier fell into a daze before he could even feel the joy of his advancement. Box novel. Calm, I told you, we are now a collective us. Zhou-Zhou looked at Geralt and immediately patted him on the shoulder with a smile. Then, he said solemnly, do you believe in me? Of course I do. Geralt said subconsciously. Zhou-Zhou grinned. Just wait then. You belong to me now. Your business is this king's business. When I achieve the Master God tier, I'll go to the abyss and personally look for Demogorgon to ask for your parents' remains and relics. If he dares to not give them to me, I promise you that you will watch as this king uses the myriad method star palm to slap him in the face. Then, I'll turn his divine kingdom upside down and find your parents' remains and relics. Trust me. I was able to break through to the God Spirit realm in such a short period of time. Even though Master God tier sounds unreachable to me, when I actually pursue this realm, this king might not need too long to reach it. How about this? Zhou-Zhou raised a hand and said seriously, 5 years. 5 years later, this king will personally bring you and this king's army to find Demogorgon. Your parents will definitely appear in front of you. Zhou-Zhou did not work so hard to increase his strength and territory just to be meek. He would lie low when it was time to lie low. When it was time to take action, he would not hesitate. Needless to say, he was on his side in this matter. A debt of blood must be paid in blood for killing one's parents. Geralt stared blankly at Zhou-Zhou. He took a deep breath, then knelt on the ground and said respectfully and firmly, I, Geralt, swear to serve His Majesty to the death in this life. As soon as he finished speaking, a text notification suddenly appeared in front of him. Faith notification, the faith level of your subject Original Sin and Demon Hunter True God tier God Spirit Geralt had risen to Fanatic Believer. Zhou-Zhou was stunned for a moment before he smiled. At the same time, not far away, the Yellow Emperor and the others could not help but smile helplessly and gratified when they saw this scene. Looks like Gerald is dead set on following Zhou. Patriarch Lu sighed. Then, a smile appeared on his face. Well, it's not a bad thing. Zhou's confidence and achievements make me feel that it's time for him to lead humanity to greater glory. The Yellow Emperor looked at Zhou and sighed in relief. Perhaps I can hand over the position of acting human clan leader and second speaker to Zhou. There's no hurry. Bai He, who had the best relationship with Zhou, shook his head when he heard that. Currently, the human race still has quite a lot of opinions about Zhou. It won't be too late to discuss this matter when he leads the human race out of the primordial world and can truly suppress the myriad worlds to protect our human race in an above-board manner. That's right. Patriarch Lu nodded. Retreating to the primordial world affected Zhou's reputation too much. Even though it was a last resort, it's still not appropriate to give your seat to Zhou now. Those are all short-sighted people. The Yellow Emperor snorted coldly when he heard this, but he still did not object to their opinion. Your Excellency Bai He. At this moment, Zhou walked over and looked at Bai He. I forgot to ask you something last time. The Night Temple has retreated from the entrance to the abyss. How did you deal with the entrance to the abyss? I've temporarily sealed the entrance to the abyss with a large array. Bai He replied, however, with my strength, I can only seal it for about half a year at most. This is under the condition that those abyss demons don't realize that our Night Temple soldiers have already retreated and don't start a large-scale invasion war. If they discover the superficial seal I set up, as long as they are willing to pay some price, the seal I set up can be broken in an instant. At this point, Bai He smiled. However, it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry. The area opposite the entrance to the abyss is very far from our human territory. Back then, if it weren't for the fact that many people of foreign races wanted to restrict the true god-tier power of our human race, I wouldn't have arranged for it to be so far away to suppress the entrance to the abyss. I used to think it was a chore. I didn't expect it to be so convenient for me to leave now. Bai He smiled. The people of foreign races near the entrance of the abyss would suffer with him gone. However, those people of foreign races were the ones who had arranged for him to suppress the entrance to the abyss back then. Even if he gave up guarding the entrance to the abyss, he didn't feel any burden. Moreover, the human race was facing an unprecedented crisis. If he dared to continue staying there to suppress the entrance to the abyss, once the enemies learned of this news and knew that most of the humans had retreated to the primordial world, they would definitely come to vent their anger in exasperation. If he dared to continue staying there to suppress the entrance to the abyss, once the enemies learned of this news and knew that most of the humans had retreated to the primordial world, they would definitely come to vent their anger in exasperation. That's good. Zhou nodded. He also thought that if the entrance to the abyss was near human territory, he would more or less send some soldiers to accept it. Otherwise, if the abyssal demons rushed out and attacked his human territory, it would be terrible. Now, there was no need to worry about this. Then, they did not say anything else and went off to do their own things. Zhou spent more than 4 hours using the Eye of the Heavens anger again. He obtained another 125 Eye of the Heavens anger targets. Then, in the remaining time, he entered the time in the reincarnation sacred palace and continued to comprehend the Lord's laws. The target of his comprehension was the Lord Law skill, King. After the Supreme Domain incident, this law skill directly advanced to the low-tier deity level elementary grade. He could no longer use the Lord Talent Crystal Fragment to increase his nomological skills at this level. He could only let Zhou comprehend them on his own. Fortunately, Zhou's comprehension ability had increased greatly. With the help of various treasures and the cheat, the Time World, he was much more efficient than when he first comprehended the Lord's Law skill. He was confident that he could advance the Law skill, King, to the low-tier deity level intermediate grade in 2 days. At that time, he would be able to advance to the low-tier deity level intermediate grade God Spirit. As for the myriad method star palm, its improvement could be gradually improved as long as Zhou Zhou fought more God Spirit level enemies and absorbed the law skills they used in battle. Time passed quickly. Night fell unknowingly. Zhou Zhou, who was walking the supreme continent in the time world and comprehending the various forms of the world, suddenly sensed something. With a thought, he separated himself from the world of time. Then, Zhou Zhou slowly opened his eyes in reality. Coincidentally, Alia's respectful voice came from outside the door. Your Majesty, Bai Yun and Heras request an audience. Let them in. Yes. Chapter 963 Master God Tier Elementary Grade, Blazing Sun Divine Master's Inheritance. Soon, Bai Yun and Heras walked in. Greetings, Your Majesty. The two of them said respectfully and led the way. Zhou Zhou nodded. He looked at the two of them and suddenly exclaimed softly. His gaze landed on Heras. Heras, you've already reached the limit of a high-tier deity level advance grade? Zhou Zhou suddenly asked. Yes, Your Majesty, Heras said respectfully. Not only that, but I also sense the bottleneck of a high-tier deity level advance grade becoming a true God tier. Therefore, I specially came over this time to ask for leave from Your Majesty and request to go to the time world of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to spend thousands or even tens of thousands of years polishing my laws to prepare for the final matter of advancing to the true God tier. Zhou Zhou nodded. In the time world of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace, the maximum ratio of time flow adjustment was 1/10,000. Which meant, Heras planned to use thousands or even 10,000 years to prepare to advance to the true God tier. If he were to make all the preparations in the time world, it would be about a year in the real world. He spoke frankly. Compared to those high-tier deity-level existences who would go into seclusion for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years to prepare to advance to the true God tier, this time was already inconceivably short. Zhou Zhou was not surprised. However, he already had other thoughts about Heras' advancement. After hearing his words, he couldn't help but look at him with a smile. Your Majesty. Why are you looking at me this way? Heras noticed Zhou Zhou's gaze and felt uneasy for a while. In the end, he could not help but ask. He thought for a moment and seemed to have thought of something. He immediately changed his words. Your Majesty, I suddenly remember that there have been many battles in the past 2 days. It would be too irresponsible for me to leave at this time. I should wait until the battles are less frequent before applying for leave. You misunderstand. I now have more than 100 God spirits under my command. What's the big deal about losing a high-tier deity-level God spirit? Zhou Zhou smiled. Heras immediately looked terrified. What was the most feared thing in the workplace for an adult who was motivated? He would be most afraid that his expertise could be replaced by his superior at any time. His Majesty's words immediately made him panic. Yes, when he first joined the Blazing Sun Kingdom, as the only high-tier deity-level expert in the kingdom, its rarity was naturally irreplaceable. But now, His Majesty was already able to casually kill low-tier true God-tier experts by himself. He could also fight against mid-tier true God-tier experts. The combat power of the high-tier deity-level subordinates had already exceeded 10, and this was not including those geniuses who had already possessed the combat power of a high-tier deity level even before they reached the high-tier deity level. In this way, he would seem ordinary and not important at all. Am I going to be replaced? Heras thought. Zhou Zhou could tell what Heras was thinking at a glance and could not help but blink. It seemed that his words just now had caused the other party to misunderstand. Heras, I can grant you your leave. But now, I'll give you 2 choices to become true God tier. The first one is to comprehend true God-tier law skills yourself and continue on your own path. Then, use your true God-tier law skills to break through the true God-tier bottleneck and become a true God-tier. As for the second one, Zhou flipped his right hand, and a book of the God Spirit that emitted the aura of a Master God-tier appeared in his hand. This is a Master God-tier elementary grade book of the God Spirit left behind by a Master God named Blazing Sunday. It records the inheritance of the Master God-tier of His Excellency. He is extremely compatible with your nomological path. You can possess it and inherit the Blazing Sun God's divine inheritance. Then, along the path of him, you can at least advance to the advanced grade of a true God-tier in the future. There's even a high chance that you can reach the level of a Master God-tier like the Blazing Sun God and become a super expert who can suppress a race. How would you choose? Zhou asked. Heras was stunned for a long time as he looked at the book of the God Spirit, which was of Master God-tier elementary grade. Then, he suddenly scratched his fire elemental head and said, "Me? What path do I have?" With that, he immediately took the book of the God Spirit from Zhou and smiled foolishly. "Your Majesty, is this really for me?" Heras asked in disbelief as he held the book of the God Spirit tightly. "It's all in your hands. If it's not yours, it's yours." Zhou rolled his eyes. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty." Heras frantically bowed to Zhou, but he still felt that he could not express his gratitude enough. This was a Master God-tier inheritance. As long as he followed the path left behind by this Master God-tier and did not die midway, there was a high chance that he could reach the end of the path and become a Master God. Such a precious treasure was so easily given to him by His Majesty without any requests. What else could I ask for with such a master? With this Master God-tier inheritance and the reincarnation sacred palace, how long will it take for you to break through to the true God-tier? Zhou asked. 3 days at the earliest, 5 days at most. Heras thought for a moment and gave an approximate range. The guidance given by the Book of the God Spirit was much more detailed than the guidance given by the true God-tier divine artifacts. Geralt's Crown of Original Sin only showed Geralt the true God-tier law of original sin that it contained after all, allowing Geralt to comprehend it on his own. Then, he would walk the path of a true God. As for the guidance given by the Book of the God Spirit, not only did it tell the deities in detail what laws they needed to comprehend at every stage, it would even teach them the comprehension of breaking through realms, the materials needed to break through realms, even the choice of law skills, and even combat experience, memory inheritance, and connections when they were alive. The word inheritance contained too many things. Therefore, Zhou was not surprised that Heras could reach the true God-tier realm in a shorter period of time. All right. Go into seclusion in the time world for the next few days. The soldiers and I will wait for the day you become a true God-tier. Zhou said. Yes, Your Majesty. Heras said solemnly. Following that, he didn't stay any longer and took his leave. He wanted to use the Book of the God Spirit right now. Then, he would immediately enter the time world and begin the process of becoming a true God-tier. When Bai Yun saw this, she respectfully said. Your Majesty, after today's battle, about 600 trillion humans have retreated to the primordial world in the territory of the 3 empires of the human race. We estimate that the humans of the 3 empires would have all retreated to the primordial world by noon tomorrow. This is the summary of our specific war today. Please take a look, Your Majesty. After Bai Yun finished speaking, she turned on her personal terminal and projected the details of today's battle into the air in front of Zhou. Chapter 964 Epic Tier Lord Talent, Light of Black Technology. War Summary 1. Zhou looked at the summary. In order to protect the human race and retreat to the primordial world, Bai Yun and the other soldiers and god spirits had fought a total of 22 billion people of foreign races. The war resources left behind by these enemies and their combat items were enhanced by the title of King of Loots and the Strongest Lord. They obtained a total of more than 820 million legendary tier mist cores, more than 5.836 billion epic tier mist cores, more than 82.077 billion extraordinary tier mist cores, more than 126.07 billion diamond tier mist cores, 185.085 billion white platinum tier mist cores, more than 259.055 billion yellow gold tier mist cores, more than 756 billion white silver tier mist cores, and 1 trillion green bronze tier mist cores. 9,100,060 million skill books. 3,108 million pieces of equipment. The basic materials were about 220,000 trillion units. More than 8,230 million units of basic elemental gemstones. More than 450 million units of thunder element gems. 300 million units of life elemental gems. 370 million units of death elemental gems. 6,040 million origin crystals. 5,008,800 green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 1 epic tier Lord Talent sphere. 6 epic tier Lord Talent crystal fragments. 156,528 Holy Spirit tier Scarlet Divine crystals. More than 260 million units of divine crystals at the low-tier deity level. There was also a total of about 5 million divine spark fragments, god-tier medicinal herbs, god-tier ingredients, god-tier ores, god-tier blueprints, and other treasures. Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading this part of the summary. Needless to say, there were still ridiculous amounts of mist cores and basic materials. The number of skill books and equipment added up to 13 trillion. That was a total of 13 trillion skill books and equipment. If not for the fact that Zhou did not have so many soldiers under him, with so many equipment and skill books, he would have been able to arm trillions of soldiers. If he sold it, who knew how many legendary tier mist cores he would have to sell. However, Zhou had no intention of selling it. There were more and more soldiers under his command, and the number was increasing in the tens of billions. Zhou still wanted to keep these equipment and skill books for his soldiers to use. However, what satisfied Zhou the most were the life elemental gems and the death elemental gems. 300 million life elemental gems and 370 million death elemental gems. A smile appeared on his face. 1/3 of the upgrade requirements have been met. In that case, as long as I obtain this amount twice more, they'll be able to gather the gemstone requirements to upgrade my territory. As for the epic tier Lord Talent sphere, Zhou planned on taking a good look at it later. Then, Zhou looked at the insight defection list and the military strength list. This morning, he had personally taken down 13 god spirits of the Vapolius Pantheon group. Then, he used 2 insight defections to take down 8 forbidden Archmage Scarlet God spirits and 5 Devil Rays Scarlet God spirits. Moreover, after today's battle, 8 legendary tier soldiers had advanced to low-tier deity level elementary grade God spirits. Then, some of the lords of the Star Alliance instigated insight defection to imprison the 53 Scarlet God spirits trapped in the 9 Netherworld Fiend Celestial prison. And now, there were only 10 Scarlet God spirits imprisoned in the 9 Nether Fiend Celestial prison. He could instigate the insight defection tomorrow. When the time comes, Zhou had a total of 170 God spirits under his command. When he saw this result, he nodded in satisfaction. This number was twice as fast as yesterday. 170 God spirits are comparable to the total number of God spirits in some small races. Zhou thought to himself. As for the other group of Star Alliance masters who did not obtain the quota for the insight defection, they had also given Zhou 1,056,008,602 people of foreign race soldiers after following the army to participate in the war with the foreign races today. Zhou Zhou now had a total of 34,263,379,704 soldiers under his command. Including the Star Alliance's current total military strength of 7,412 billion, Zhou Zhou's total military strength had already reached an astonishing 41.8 billion soldiers. Among the troops under his command, excluding the Star Alliance, there were 1,040,977,120 Black Iron Tier soldiers. There were 4,895,626,520 Green Bronze Tier soldiers. There were 15,613,568,720 White Silver Tier soldiers. There were 6,032,125,752 Yellow Gold Tier soldiers. There were 3,536,500,000 White Platinum Tier soldiers. There were 1,789,202,626 Diamond Tier soldiers. There were 965.2 million Extraordinary Tier soldiers. There were 387.3 million Epic Tier soldiers. There were 2,862,330 Legendary Tier soldiers. As for the God Spirits under him, after today's battle, their strength had also increased astonishingly. Among them, Wuxia, Qi Xiantian, and Yuan Song had advanced to mid-tier deity level advance grade. Vicky, Bai Yun, Wu Xian, Feng Luo, Suan, and Luo Sheng had all advanced to mid-tier deity level elementary grade. The strength of the other god spirits had also increased to a certain extent. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. The strength of the god spirits under him was steadily improving. However, he didn't have the main god tier, Book of the God Spirit, that was suitable for their nomological path. There were quite a few true god tier, Book of the God Spirit. When they were about to advance to true god tier, he could give them the true god level Book of the God Spirit to help them complete their final breakthrough. As for the Master God tier Book of the God Spirit, he would definitely encounter it in the future as the level of his enemies kept increasing. When the time came, he would reward them. Chapter 965 Epic Tier Lord Talent, Light of Black Technology. War Summary 2. After that, Zhou Zhou and Bai Yun chatted for a while about tomorrow's battle arrangements before Bai Yun took her leave. After he left, Zhou Zhou flipped his right hand, and a purple Epic Tier Lord Talent Sphere appeared in his hand. He looked at the Lord Talent Sphere thoughtfully. In fact, in the recent war, Zhou Zhou had obtained a lot of Lord Talent Spheres. However, most of them were low-tier Lord Talent Spheres, such as Black Iron Tier, Green Bronze Tier, and White Silver Tier. Yellow Gold Tier was rare, let alone Extraordinary Tier. Box Novel. Zhou Zhou did not fuse them into his body. Instead, he treated them as ordinary Lord Talent crystal fragments and placed them in the king's treasure box. The reason was, he felt that these Lord Talents were too low level. They would not be of much help to him even if he opened them. For example, he encountered a Green Bronze Tier Lord Talent, Home of Craftsmen. The effect of this talent could allow the territory to accept 5 more Green Bronze Tier craftsmen every day. As the territory level increased, the grade of the craftsmen would not change, but the number would increase. This was completely useless against Zhou Zhou. The Blazing Sun Kingdom received more than 100 million refugees every day. Craftsmen were just an ordinary profession, not a rare profession after all. Hence, just by looking among these refugees, one could find tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of refugees from craftsman professions who wanted to join his Blazing Sun Kingdom. Occasionally, he would see some rare craftsman professions, such as strange item maker, trap master, doll merchant, toy artist. They would often appear among the refugees who came to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom, wanting to become subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom and obtain its protection. Under such circumstances, how could Zhou Zhou be interested in a family of Green Bronze Tier craftsmen? He was not even interested in using the Lord Talent crystal fragment to increase the grade of his talent. With this thought in mind, he might as well save the Lord Talent crystal fragment and use it to increase the legendary tier Lord Talent to the mythical tier unique Lord Talent. A complete mythical tier unique Lord Talent crystal fragment required 1 billion green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments after all. Even though Zhou already had 6 mythical tier unique Lord Talent crystal fragments, he also needed to collect another 400 million green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments to gather the talent materials needed to level up to the mythical tier. Therefore, even though Zhou could collect more than 110 million green bronze tier Lord Talent crystal fragments today, he was still a distance away from upgrading his legendary tier Lord Talent to the mythical tier unique Lord Talent. He stopped thinking about it. Zhou looked at the epic tier Lord Talent sphere. A text notification appeared. Treasure name, Lord Talent Sphere, Light of Black Technology, Treasure Grade, Epic Tier, Treasure Effect. After absorbing it, the Lord will have an Epic Tier Lord Talent, Light of Black Technology. Treasure Description, a loot that could not be dropped. It was forced to drop under the drive of some mysterious power. Light of Black Technology. Zhou was stunned. Was it a technological type Lord Talent? He pondered for a while and gradually felt that it would be a good choice if he added a technological type Lord Talent to his territory. After all, the ultimate Lord, Zhou, had received the support of a large number of mist core and divine crystals from him. He had already begun to send endless technological information and technological creation resources to the Blazing Sun Kingdom to build the mixed virtual reality era. In terms of technological knowledge, his territory was completely prepared for the mixed virtual reality era. At this time, if his territory had another technological Lord Talent, it would definitely speed up the descent of the mixed virtual reality era. Thinking of this, he stopped thinking and chose to absorb it. The next second, the epic tier Lord Talent sphere immediately turned into countless purple light spots and surged into his glabella. Zhou closed his eyes. A moment later, he reopened his eyes again after some time. Then, he immediately opened his Lord's personal information. The epic tier Lord Talent, Light of Black Technology, appeared in his Lord Talent column. The 33rd Lord Talent. Zhou nodded slightly. Then, he opened the details of the talent. Lord Talent, Light of Black Technology, Epic Tier, Light of Black Technology, your territory is illuminated by the laws of science. Creatures who love scientific and technological knowledge in your territory have a 30% chance of changing to a kingdom-level rare life profession, science researcher, through completing a certain amount of scientific and technological knowledge accumulation during the process of learning. There was a 10% chance of changing to an empire-level rare life profession, great scientist. There was a 0.1% chance of changing to a rare divine kingdom life profession, the highest source code scholar. The more knowledge you have, the easier it is for you to change your profession to a higher-level black technology personnel. Note 1, Scientific researcher, refers to a person who is passionate about science and technology, can endure loneliness and engage in ordinary scientific research activities, and can assist great scientists and supreme source code scholars to complete their scientific research activities. Occasionally, they would come up with some small technological inventions. There was a very small chance that they would create great scientists or even supreme source code scholars to invent black technology inventions or black technology theoretical knowledge. Note 2, Great scientist, high-level professionals who possess top-notch professional knowledge in a certain field of science and technology and are highly respected in the scientific community. They can see the nature of science through the phenomenon of the manifestation of all things and carry out passable summary activities. They are the mainstay of scientific and technological civilization. Great scientists can occasionally conjecture knowledge that surpasses the current racial technological civilization. They can even discover or invent science and technology or products that lack the scientific basis of the current era of racial civilization and violate the principles of nature. Note 3, Supreme Source Code Scholars, a group of scholars who have recognized the true origin of the world. They believe that the myriad worlds are composed of supreme source codes that the life-form civilization can't understand. Supreme Source Code Scholars can create everything through researching supreme source codes, modify reality, return to the past, change fate, become God spirits, and even, become an omnipotent supreme will. However, ever since the appearance of the Supreme Source Code Scholar, no Supreme Source Code Scholar has been able to achieve the last point. After Zhou Zhou finished reading, before he could think about the specific use of this Lord Talent, a new line of text appeared. Lord Talent Notification: as the Lord Talent holder of the Light of Black Technology, you are eligible to change your profession to a Supreme Source Code Scholar. Do you want to change your job immediately? Lord Talent Notification 2, your scientific and technical knowledge has reached the requirements to advance to the Supreme Source Code Scholar. Do you want to advance? Zhou Zhou looked at the two notifications and could not help but be stunned. After a while, he finally reacted and couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that he had fulfilled the dual requirements to advance to the so-called Supreme Source Code Scholar. That was why he had triggered these two class advancement notifications at the same time. Well, he was a famous person from the Machina race and had grasped many high-level scientific inheritances of the Machina race, other than his ultimate Lord Avatar. Just the countless bloodline civilization legacies in his mind were probably enough for him to meet the conditions to advance to a Supreme Source Code Scholar. Change. After Zhou Zhou figured it out, he said without hesitation. This was a rare Divine Kingdom life profession. High-level professions were rarer than Divine Kingdom life professions. He would be a fool not to change his class. As soon as he finished speaking, the information about the Lord Talent class change appeared. Lord Talent Notification: you have successfully changed your profession to a rare Divine Kingdom life profession, Supreme Source Code Scholar. Profession hint: you have awakened Divine Kingdom rare profession talent, Eye of the Supreme Source Code, Divine Kingdom rare profession talent, Invoke Source Code, Divine Kingdom rare profession talent, Myriad Decomposition, Supreme Source Code, Create Basic Materials, Supreme Source Code, Create Black Iron Tier Materials, Supreme Source Code, Create Green Bronze Tier Materials. Supreme Source Code, Create Low-Tier Deity Level Elementary Grade Materials. Zhou Zhou looked at these notifications and raised his eyebrows slightly. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.